All right, we are live.
All right, y'all. Welcome to All Politics Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Well, listen, y'all. Y'all know if it is the third Friday, you'll know it is time to bring the fire on the mayor's forum. Y'all know last month, he was bringing the heat. So, but of course, y'all know that this week was the 95th birthday of our beloved ancestor, the one and only Malcolm X. So we can't wait to get into a dialogue with our brother, our beloved brother, Mayor Ras Baraka. And just to tell you a little bit about what's coming up, I know Zayid, you excited to talk about these two generals. So why don't you tell them who's coming up after the mayor tonight?
I think they would be humbled at the idea of being called generals. They have been covered with generals for years. But then we're talking about
they're generals in journalism, brother.
They are. Indeed they are, and they need to be appreciated as such. And they have been out here for a long time. Both of them are in their 80s now, right? Two enormous, elegant elders. A. Peter Bailey, who was a young man, a college-age young man, when he joined the Organization of Afro-American Unity with Malcolm, and Herb Boyd, coming out of the military service and became a journalist out of Detroit. It became a Harlem legend, like Malcolm became a Harlem legend, coming straight out of Detroit. The author of several important books, including a great book on Detroit's Black history, but most recently and related to what we're going to talk about tonight to honor Malcolm's birthday, the editor of Malcolm X, Real, Not Invented by Any Means Necessary. In fact, our favorite young son over at Seton Hall, Kelly Harris, has an essay in that particular compilation that Herb Boyd did. There were two books that came out that took Manning Marable to task. Herb is the editor of one, and our own Todd Burrows and Jared Ball is the editor of the other, the Lie of Reinvention. So that's the context that we have to set for these two grand, elegant, pioneering Black journalists who've been beacons of Black dignity from their posts for better than 50 years each between them.
So that's going to be fire as well, to be able to talk to them two brothers, particularly about the Harlem they grew up in, and of course, Malcolm X, and and get into some conversation with them. But of course, y'all know it's the mayor's forum, so we're going to welcome the mayor. Mayor, you're looking a little sideways right now. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? What's happening?
You, brother?
Yes, sir. Just glad to be on as usual.
What's going on, man?
A lot of stuff happening, everywhere. All kind of things going on.
Indeed.
I want to talk a little bit about. I'm glad we talk about Malcolm. That's for sure. That'd be good. But I want to talk about some of the violence that's going on around here and around the country. But also, just before I signed off yesterday, it was something. Last month, there was some stuff in the chat I wanted to address. I didn't say have the time. I had to go. I had like a zillion other events to go to, like I do now. And I got like a violence prevention meeting going on at the same time, and I'm like head on over there as well because it's stuff that's happening around here and around the country that we just have to address. And I think one of the things that we have to figure out and we have to do better is just in terms of strategy, just how I was addressing some of the stuff that was in the chat before I got off last time. Most of the things that we do is about alliances. I mean, obviously, sometimes people, so if we're uniting with the North Side or with the Brown community, with the Latino community, like the Black and Puerto Rican Convention did before to get King Gibson, we do that, and they pick their candidates and we pick ours. That's how alliances work, And at the end of the day, we push that. We don't question their candidates unless they are like completely backwards or not, in concert with what we're trying to do going forward. But ultimately, those are the people that they pick. We pick our own folks, and most of the people we pick are very consistent in terms of who we want on that board, and we're gonna stay that way until there's something that says that we should go in another direction in terms of alliances around here. And that's important because ultimately, without these alliances, we don't have the authority and the power that we need, because people make alliances with other folks, and then it make it more difficult for us to do the things that we need to do. And that's the way it is. It's only like one or two positions, and a bunch of us try to run for the same positions of everything all the time, not knowing there's like a zillion things that we should be doing, and we should be strategizing, trying to get as many different post positions appointed, elected all over the state, county, whatever. But they give us 5 positions, and we fight each other for the 5 positions that are there, and we try to out radicalize each other and say who's more progressive than the other, and they go back and forth and destroy each other. Right. 4 or 5 positions when it's actually 45 positions, right? But the 4 or 5 that we can get are usually the ones that we fight over. Like there's all kind of positions, county positions, state positions, even federal positions, appointed boards, commissions, everything that we need to be on that we're missing out. Like how many of us on a parole board, right? How many of us on Port Authority board? Like how many of us on any of these boards and commissions that exist throughout the state? And we need to begin to figure out how to do that on a county and a state level. But I wanted to say that before I got off, but I didn't really have any time to do that. But that's where we are. And then maybe we need to have a convention here locally, right? I know we're doing a national one. Maybe we need a statewide one with local elected officials and activists and whomever to talk about where we are and where we need to go and what positions need to be available for who. And just because you do one thing don't mean you'll be good at the other either. So we need to make that clear, right? So everybody know that there's a position for everybody to play. We just need to play it.
So really what you're talking about is to try to be organized as a community, like most communities get organized, as in you're like, we're fighting over the same positions. I think that you were originally talking about the school board. And what would be, I think that a lot of people don't recognize what precipitated those alliances anyway. Like, so because we were under state control, it was Cammie Anderson and Surf. It was a lot of different back and forth. Sometimes people might understand it better if they understood what the original situation was, because we have short memories, we forget.
Yeah, of course we do. I mean, we were fighting the state, we fighting the huge charter community that was moving forward and closing schools. And I mean, we were just going in the opposite direction totally. And people taking advantage of the fact that the city is divided. They take advantage of racial division. They take advantage of demographic division. Any division that people could take advantage of, they are. They take advantage of that in our community. They instigate these kind of pseudo beefs between each other and use that to undermine what we want collectively and do whatever they want. That's why we had to deal with Cammie Anderson. That's why we had to deal with Chris Surf. That's why most of our schools were closed, all of those things, right? And so to reverse that, we had to prevent that from happening and begin to formulate a kind of united front, because that's what it's called, formulate a united. And we're not clear on that, because a lot of people, they know their own interests. They just don't know, political struggle. And I'm not just talking about electoral politics. When I say politics, I'm talking about all kind of politics, because electoral politics is just one form of it, right? Elected politics is one form of political struggle. And ultimately we had to form a united front. And in a united front, there's a whole bunch of little differences, right? As long as we can agree on fundamental things, and that, the stuff that we argue and fighting for, we're not diametrically opposed to one another. And so when you form that alliance, you can't pick the other person's people for them. Right? You can't do that. That's not an alliance, right? That's you in charge, right? They're gonna pick who they want to pick, and we pick who we want to pick, unless we have problems with those people, and then we raise the problems and issues, and we struggle about it internally until we come to a conclusion about what needs to be done, right? We struggle about a whole bunch of things that we always struggle about. When people say stuff on the board, things they vote on we don't agree with, we have to struggle about it, and we struggle about those things internally, behind the scenes, and some people struggle about it publicly, and that's okay. But ultimately, when the contradictions, if the contradictions get too severe, where the alliance can no longer maintain itself, then it'll break naturally. But ultimately, until then, we do this for the betterment of trying to make sure we grow our public school system that is stable, that is strong. We had to get through this whole state takeover piece, and we did that. So we calmed everybody down. We worked in a collective, and we did what we needed to do to get to that point.
I think also one thing to was said that we should try to get politics out of education or politics out of elections.
That makes no sense.
But right, and so can you break that down for us? Because I know I kind of predict what your response is going to be, but can you just break that down to us?
Everything is political. People who think that they should get politics out of stuff should not be in it because they don't understand what's going on, right? Politics is war, without bloodshed, right? That's really what it is. It is our ability to battle on a field to seize power, influence, control, which are all different things, right? Power, influence, and control, and be able to get goods and services for our community, right? Protect ourselves, and that's what it's about for the most part. Education is politics, right? As a matter of fact, politics need to be in education, and because politics is not in education, people are backward and apolitical, right? It needs to be straightforward. We need to tell people politically, nobody else's community is educating them to be apolitical, right? We have to. People have to know what politics is, electoral politics, and politics. Period. I think people's problem is they have not organized themselves in a way to win. And I get that. I understand that. So it brings frustration. So you say these types of things. Because listen, when I was running and doing all these things, I was fighting against the machine, doing this, doing that. When we were younger, I was running for mayor. I was running against some very high-powered money people, and I did it again in 2014. But it took us time to build an organization, right? You can't get mad at other people because they're doing what they need to do to satisfy their interests. Right. And we have to do the same thing. We can't do that because we can't come together on anything. So other folks, their interests are being represented. I mean, if you don't think education is politics, good grief. I mean, the Board of Education has a greater budget than the city of Newark. Right. Their budget is larger than the city of Newark together. Contracts, jobs, curriculum, preparation for employment. All of that stuff is a part of what public school is, right? Education. You either educating people to be liberated or you educating them to be slaves, right? And our struggle to get control of the educational system is about that. It's not about your individual ambition to serve in a position, and we have to separate the two, or about just this idea that I want to be in because I want to watch this, I want to watch that. When you get there, you're gonna realize how big this monster is this big gorilla, and there's a lot of things that you need to be able to do. You're gonna need alliances to get it done because you on a board full of 8 other people, and if you can't get them votes, it don't even make sense for you to even be on it. You're just a token. If you can't get other people to vote your way, then you can't get nothing accomplished. Right. And if you just want to scream and yell, then there's a place for that. It's just not on the school board.
And when you were talking about breaking down the definition of politics, I think that what you're like, I think that politics is just that human condition. We're talking to each other. We're organizing. Like politics by definition is organizing. I think that there may be a difference in the way that people understand what the word means and how it's used.
They thinking of electoral politics. They're thinking of folks running.
Mr. Mayor, you were coming. We couldn't hear the last 15 seconds of what you said.
I think they're talking about electoral politics, and they don't want incumbents and folks like that involved in it. They don't want political organizations involved in it. Then they're mistaken. Like, this thing is old as time itself, man. This was created for those very reasons. We have to. You're not just getting in it just for the fun of it. You got to get in this thing with the intent to make some real things happen, not just to like browbeat people and be upset. You got to move on stuff. In order to do that, you have to be aligned. You have to make alliances. You have to be a part of something bigger. And look, we had to find that out the hard way, and we had to do other specific things to make it happen. But obviously, there's no way you're going to get elected officials or other people to stand down in any elected position or appointed position in any place in the state, because everybody has an agenda and you're trying to get your agenda accomplished, and you can't get that done with just a bunch of independent individual people on there who are just doing what they want to do. That's just not going to happen.
And because you're saying that if one person, if your interests are not represented, someone else's interests will be. Well, like what happened with Cammie Anderson and Surf. Like it wasn't local interests that were being held. There were national interests that were coming into Newark. There were statewide interests that were coming into Newark. Like you can go back to when they were building all those schools, and $100 million got lost, and the state did it, and no one went to jail because it was their politics that was running it. They weren't building our schools, but they were making money off our schools, right?
And we argue with each other about so minuscule, dumb things, and these people were stealing from us, doing all kind of stuff. It's so crazy. Like the first time we won something is we put together our own slate, right? We put together our own slate and school board, and we ran against Steve Adebato's team, right? There were some people on our slate that was on his team, but they were from our community. So I went to go visit those people at their home and talk to them and ask them to get off of their slate, get off of those people's slate. You don't got no business over there. And they was like, well, do we have one? Yeah, we're gonna make one. You come over here with us. You can win by yourself, but we need you to be over here with us so we can win, not just you can win. You know what I mean? And so we built our own ticket. That's the first time we beat. I think it was Daddy's Choice or something like it was called. We beat Steve Adebato, and he showed up at Central High School with some cannolis to congratulate me for the first time we beat him. I told him, you eat it first because I saw that movie. But at the end, that's a true story.
Fair.
But at the end of the day, we were running people and losing, independent, doing this, doing that, like just yelling and fighting and being angry. Then we decided we got to organize ourselves. Like we know how to win these campaigns. We know what it is that we need to do. We just have to get out here and get it done. And they keep picking they know they need black people represented on their ticket, right? So they getting the best and the brightest, and they putting them over there with them, right? So we're gonna have to intercept that. We have to go over there and get them, right? And say, look, you can't be on this person's ticket. You got to be over here. You live over here. You can't be over there. And that's how we begun it, right? Really, in terms of the struggle for the school board. And struggle for the school board is a long-standing fight in this city.
Now, you're saying that the struggle for school board is a long-standing fight in the city. Can you give us? And if you want to change the subject and talk about something else, you can.
I mean, yeah, I am. But it was appointed. The fight for it to become from appointed to elected. The fight when there was a more qualified black person to put on the board as opposed to some other person they wanted to put on the board. That was during the time when the Newark Rebellion jumped off. It's all kind of politics
from the 60s.
Always,
from the 60s, there has been the school board has been part of a long-standing political fight. You're like since the uprisings.
Absolutely, and before then, absolutely. People, and because like I said, the school board, they have, all of these other interests that are involved in it, but more importantly, like it's setting the agenda for the educational tone, of this city, right? And that's important. And look, I'd rather have people that I can fight with, than people I don't know at all, right? And my father used to say that about somebody that's in the city. I won't name their names. Who, he said the reason why I tolerate or this person is because at least I can fight him. I can see him. I can put my hands on him. I can struggle with him, as opposed to people you don't even know who come here and run the place. You don't know where they eat at, hang out at. You don't know nobody in their family. You don't know nothing, so you can't get to them. Like at least I can get to these people and twist their arm a little bit and say a few things to them. And that's what it's about. You ain't never gonna stop struggling, brother. That's what this thing is. It ain't gonna never. The fight ain't never gonna be over. We never gonna agree 100% about who should be where. But we should at least, if you're serious about trying to do some stuff, you should try to be a part of the larger process, or get involved in an organization, or build an organization of your own. But you got to build an organization. We think that getting on social media cursing each other out is how you're gonna get elected, and it ain't. It's just not. It's just gonna make you more frustrated.
So, Mayor, would you say what you just? Well, two things. One is that I think that most of the people don't really know the information that you're dropping right now. That's one. And then two, how many offices or positions did you say were available in the city that we don't know nothing about because we fighting over these 5 or 8 positions?
I'm saying all over the county and the state, man, everywhere. I mean, I mean, there's positions everywhere. I mean, you have assembly positions, Senate positions, freeholder positions, their age. You have boards and commissions that they appoint. Boards and commissions that city council people appoint, that the mayor appoints, from Passaic Valley Sewage Company to Port Authority, governor positions that the state folks appoint, and boards they appoint numerous ones. And we are not on any of that, have no knowledge of it, right? We just got hit to some of this stuff, and so we struggling trying to get a hold of these things, and really don't have an agenda about what we're going to do when we get there. And we need that. We need that. And I heard people saying, like, talking about some of those folks on the other side, and I don't want to say the other side, on the other part of the ticket, like, who's qualified to do that, who's qualified to do that. I mean, these people are professionals too. They lawyers, they whatever, they businessmen. I mean, they're being picked by their community. And that's what we have to understand, right? They're being picked by their community. And so what happens is, now you start getting people to get into this black and brown thing and start saying, oh, why do we got to have them on the committee? And then that is what these people want. That's the beginning of the end. Because Ken Gibson is not the mayor of the city without the Latino community. Without Black and Puerto Rican Convention, it doesn't happen. Because he ran before that, lost. I don't know if people know that.
And you're breaking down this history in terms of just what it actually takes in order to organize, and that these struggles, like, we can trace it back. It goes back further than the 60s, but you're just tracing back, like, the more recent history of this. These are how coalitions work. This is actual work you have to do. It's probably not going to be on social media. It's probably going to be talking to people, like, and going to people's houses, talking to people in the street, talking to people who and convincing them to join your part or not, but understanding that even if you disagree, you can agree enough for this election.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Long as there's nothing like offensive or, you diametrically opposed to, but at the end of the day, like, you have to raise money, you have to build an organization, you have to know what you're doing out there when you campaign it. It's not just about, like, I think I'm popular. Look, I ran for office in 1994 at 24 years old, man. It took me a bunch of times to get beat up to realize how this thing is done, right? So just because we so much in a vacuum, right? We believe that, the 20 people we hang out with is the community, and it's just not. Right. It's just not. Right. It's not. Right. So there are hundreds of people out there, thousands, who don't know you, right? And some of them don't agree with what you're saying, right? They might think it's extreme. They might think it's crazy. And so you got to convince people. And that's the hardest thing about politics, going to convince people to believe the stuff you say you believe, right? And be strong enough with that to be able to represent that. And the interesting thing is about that, when you start going out here trying to tell people your theory and what it is you believe based on your practice, sometimes it sharpens your theory. Like, when you say you believe something, then go out here and do it. Like, you discover fire, share it. And so if you get out here and you start doing that, and you realize you have to tweak this, tweak that, do this, do that, and that's what happens with between theory and practice, right? When you start putting your theory to use, sometimes it changes. Why? Because it's not sharp enough. And if you're using a dull tool, and you got to sharpen the tool to get done what you need to get done, right? And how do you convince the people of the community that you got the right line. You can't just think you got the right line because you read a good book and you think you're smart and you hang with these people and they all agree with you. There's tens of thousands of people who never heard anything you're talking about, right? And you have to convince them that what you're saying is right. And more importantly, even if they think what you're saying is right, that you are the one to implement it.
So, Mayor, I mean, something you just said, I'm curious about. You said you ran your first race. You was 24. You ran a whole bunch of times. I'm curious, what would the 24-year-old Ras could learn from a 50-year-old Ras right now? What could he learn?
Like what I said, the importance of alliances. Building your organization. Sometimes you get you get almost like a foxhole mentality, and you get this idea that everybody is wrong and you right. And so only the people around you, you don't expand your circle. You're not out here growing your circle, your people. You're not organizing, right? You're satisfied with the 10 people you have. You need to go out and get more people, bring them in and make room for them. And sometimes the distrust of everybody makes it difficult. Like we distrusted a lot of people, based on how we came up and what was going on. So we didn't allow a lot of people in and around and be a part of what we were doing, which was a mistake, right? The idea that everybody agreed with us because we thought we were right was also a mistake, right? We needed, and there's some alliances that we could have made early on, but our politics was too pure to make the alliances that we needed to make. So we couldn't move as fast as we needed to move. Right? And when I say it's too pure, it's like everybody don't have the same perspective as you. Everybody is not gonna agree with you, right? Even Malcolm said in the Ballad of Bullet, like, at the end of the day, we all, all of our religion, if we start talking about religion, we're gonna have a fight for all day long, right? So some things you gotta know, you're just not gonna agree with people on. Right? You can't, your barometer for organizing with people can't be that they agree with everything you say. Right? Or you ain't gonna be with nobody but the 15, 20 people that agree with everything you say. Right? Because everybody's not gonna want to do that, or they ain't gonna agree with that. They don't understand it and they don't see it from your perspective. So you have to have the room to be able to align yourself with people who are not 100% on the same page as you.
And part of that,
and the reality is you might be the wrong one.
Wow.
I mean, that's what it takes. I mean, there's a level of maturity and level of organizing, a different level of organizing. Like a united front is not an organization, right? Your organization is your organization. What you believe is what you believe. But a united front is a united front. People believe several different things and they come together around a united front and say we agree to do these things specifically, but we might believe certain things, we might believe different things, we might feel different things, but we agree to do these specific things, and that's different. And you form alliances around that. Look, the Chinese organized with the Kuomintang to get rid of the Japanese, and then they wound up fighting each other. In history. So at some point, your allies become your enemies, and your enemies your allies. You have to be sophisticated enough to understand that.
That's right.
And a lot of times, like we've had these conversations before on the show. Often after an election, there are people who are upset, right? And either in a conversation with you or we're in a conversation with your brother Mitty, you actually break down the same thing, right? Like you're like, you gotta understand why you didn't get the votes, just like you have to understand why you didn't get the votes before when you were much younger, right? Like, and even in these more recent elections, they weren't close.
Yeah, listen, it was hard for me. In some elections, I cried, man. Because you work so hard and you do all this work and you think it's going to turn out one way and it don't turn out that way, right? But in reality, most of it, you need to be introspective, right? And start figuring out what you did wrong, right? Because the more you lose, the closer you are to winning.
Right.
And so, like, it just means that you have to go at it each time and change different things here and there until you figure out how to get this thing done, how to get it accomplished, right? If we would have ran against a machine like we ran against 2014 in 1994, we would have got stomped. You know how I know? Because we got stomped in 1994 against a formidable machine, which was the Sharp James machine, but it was nowhere near as formidable as that statewide machine that came against us in 2014.
Right.
And what's the major difference now in 2015? Is it just the knowledge that you have, or is it the alliances that you have, or
it's both?
I mean,
I think we're more knowledgeable. We have bigger, greater alliances, and I think that strategy-wise, I think Amity is just good at the ground game, and that's important more than anything. Like, people worried about stuff, you gotta be worried about the ground game. How did the Vietnamese fight the U.S.? How did they keep them out of there? How did they keep us, out of there? Right? They were dropping bombs, but the Vietnamese had the ground game.
Right.
You don't got the ground game. You got to hang it up.
That's interesting, because one of the things you always hear about elected officials, coming through in the last 20 years, they always said that it would always be the guy that had the best ground game would win the election, right?
You got to have a ground game.
Yeah.
And the internet is not a ground game. Social media is not a ground game.
Right. But that's what people think today, though.
You need people, and you need to organize people, and that's the thing that's the greatest criticism I had, because we had like this really mentality that nobody could help us but us, right? You got to grow your base. You got to grow your base. And then you got to get them people out there in the street. Look, if you want to run for office, ask 20 of your friends, will they come out and volunteer for you for free? And see if they can get that. And if you don't got 20 friends, you need to stop. You need to figure out something else anyway. And the same 20 friends that you ask, would they work for free? Ask them, would they give you a $50 donation? And if you can't get your friends and family to give you $50 and get out there and campaign for you, then it's over from the beginning. So that's just the first part. And then you have to grow that base and get more and more people, because that's the basis of your ground game. Who's knocking on those doors? Who's going to those churches? Who's going to those events? Who's representing you? Because you can't be everywhere.
Right.
Like, who's out there making it happen for you?
Right.
Like, all this other stuff, mailing, TV, social media ads, all that stuff, that's good. That's good. But ultimately, who you got on the ground?
Right.
The Biden campaign didn't change until the ground changed.
Right.
Until one of the black leaders from the South got up and said one thing, right, and the ground game changed for them.
Right.
And the people out in the street start doing the work. Clyburn, that's right. Start doing the work, and that's what happens. You got to get that ground game together. And I'm giving these people, I'm telling you what you need to do, and maybe, like you said, there need to be workshops and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, you can't think you're gonna win just because you think you're right.
Right.
Because politics ain't never been about who was right.
Right.
And even more importantly, I think for this conversation is, like, whenever you lose, you've got to be critical about, at the bottom line, why you didn't get those votes, right? Like,
That's it.
I'm a debate coach, right? Like, when we lose,
and it has more to do with you than your opponent. Look,
right.
When Donald Tucker was alive, right, and his son and I are really, really close. He said to me, when I was running, I ran against him. He said to me, I think you should be the councilman. That's what he told me. I think you should be the councilman, but I'm not going to give it to you. That's what he said. You got to take it.
Right.
That's what he told me. So at the end, I mean, as a young man, I was upset by that. But right now, what he's saying is, like, you got to build something to do this. You got to take this from these people. You got to go out here and make this happen. You get respect that way, not by like cursing people out and doing this and that. Build an organization. Make yourself formidable. That's what you're supposed to do, and make alliances and all the other things that you need to make. And don't get angry with other people because they know how to make alliances and you don't.
It's interesting that you raised Mr. Tucker up too, because one of the things that he did that's important discussion, especially as we're talking more of a lateral discussion, not just those handful of seats, but the breadth of what we can do in the whole area, is that he built up the New Jersey Black Issues Convention.
That's right.
Right, a statewide network. So had this notion of us working together and looking at the whole state for all those places where we can be strategic. Now, and I'm saying that to say, because that's an organization now. It's an organization now of elders, right? It's a kind of organization that needs a regeneration, a reinvigoration, right, of some fresh blood, right? So we can actually apply the very thing that you're talking about.
That's very true. I agree with that 100%. And that became a formidable organization for us. Yes. Everybody that was running for office came to the Black Issues Convention to give a speech. Mm-hmm. So that's very clear, and we need to do that again and and make that organization what it used to be. That's for sure. Yep. But I'm willing to, like, whatever. Like I said, I'm willing to get in the room, talk to people. I said that before. Like, I'm ready to talk to people. Whatever information I got, you can have it. I'll talk to you about it. I mean, you have to be willing to take it, and willing to deal with the fact that we're not gonna always agree about what we're talking about. And that's it. And if you're not willing to have unity and struggle, then you're not willing to have liberation or freedom. Like, you got to be willing to unite and struggle. And in order to do that, it has to be based on love and sincerity, not based on vindictiveness and individualism.
Right. But that's the thing, though, man. Because most of our people are operating right from that level of self-hatred, and so when you talking about love, that's a foreign level of understanding for them. So. And you talking about struggle, it becomes about me. It doesn't become about us. It's all about me.
That's what it is, man. They need to listen to Malcolm. Y'all talk about Malcolm. Who taught you to hate yourself? Your broad nose, right? Yeah. You can't hate the root of the tree and not hate the tree. That's real. Like, I watch people in our community, like, really, really, really get on and go hard at elected officials and representatives that look like us and get them a pass to everybody else.
That's right.
I watch that all the time, right? I'm on a radio show yesterday, and I listen to people get on the radio show, give accolades to people. They don't even know these people, and then come at all of the people that look like us. Right, and that's what happens, and it's self-hatred, right? Even when Cory Booker was running for the United States Senate, and he was running against Lonergan, Cory Booker and I had some contradictions at that time, right? And we may have a few contradictions even still, but at that time we had some sharper contradictions, right? People came to me with people in this community to say, oh, we want to support Lonergan. Well, that don't make any sense, right? That makes no sense. How can I support a racist, a white supremacist, a white man, racist white supremacist over Cory Booker? It makes no sense, right? And then people say, oh, how can you do that? Y'all have odds. Yeah, we have differences, but I'm not a fool. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna, my differences with Cory Booker are not so great that I will kill my whole community at the expense of that. And people are just not as sophisticated enough to understand that. So they see us building a relationship, which is a lot better now, see us building a relationship. And it started at that point because our enemies became common. Right? That's just real. I mean, that's how it starts, right? So I would never do that. Never. So everybody, we just need to, we need to get ourselves in that place, that mindset. I just don't think we're there, and it's unfortunate because it's years, decades even, that we've gone through so much. We should at least fundamentally be at that point.
But we're not, and that's the thing, man, because you know, for our people, it's difficult for people to listen to people who look like them, number one, and then two, to believe that those particular people like yourself and people who are talking actually know the way, right? That's hard for them to believe that
That's
because
right.
because of so many years of being browbeating with miseducation, as Carter G. Woodson would say. You know, they've been browbeated with that, and so that level of self-hatred and that level of doubt and disbelief in their own people just won't allow them to believe that somehow Mayor Baraka could be right after being 24 and losing all those elections, and now realize that there's a path that we can travel that will get us to the finish line. That's hard to believe because
It is.
he's black, his nose is too broad. That
Right,
he
man.
don't have enough hair. That's just not right.
That's right. He
You
said,
know.
Malcolm, next time you say Mr. Muhammad is teaching hate, you ask yourself, who taught you to hate yourself?
So man, let's go there, man. You know that Malcolm celebrated his 95th birthday this week. You know, I put on your press release today, you know, how important would you say the ballot or the bullet is today? How important?
I mean, fundamentally, it's still important. I mean, we have not gotten the ballot. We've gotten it more than we had, but it is not where we need it to be. That's for sure. Malcolm was talking about, you know, the political philosophy, the economic philosophy, all of that should be black nationalism, basically saying that we should control the politicians in our community. We should control the economics of our community. So most of that, some of that is there in a superficial way, but it's not concretized. It's not, we don't control the economics in our community. There's a lot of things we still have not been able to do. We are definitely, it's definitely not 1965, 1964, but it's certainly far away from where we need to be. And so the ballot of bullet is still has some relevance today, and it still sound good too. By the way, when you listen to it,
Right.
So that is very real. Some of the things that Malcolm struggled about are still real today, right? And some of the differences that people had, we still struggling with those same differences, and we have not been able to resolve them the way Malcolm wanted us to resolve them. You know, when he was talking about us getting together to do that, right? How do we resolve that? How do we resolve our issues and bring our case to the United Nations and you know, charge genocide, right? And all these other kind of things. How do we do that, right? Hell, we can't even get an anti-lynching bill passed with the U.S. Congress.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is still relevant today. It's still relevant at this point. It definitely is, you know, and they exploited the differences between Malcolm and Martin and all of the other leaders of that time. Not only did they exploit some of them, they got them to kill each other and do all kind of other craziness, you know, and, you know, they really went hard then, you know what I mean? And so it's been softened up a little bit, but the premise is still the same.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
I was Ed. You could ask the next question because I was gonna switch the subject a little bit because when he first came on, he was talking about was gonna talk about violence, but then address this. But if you have another question on Malcolm X, Ed, you could ask that.
I do. So if you know, for most of us, man, as you know, in the 90s, a lot of us, sort of discovered our blackness, with the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? And if you talk to most young people, and you talk to, them and they'll say, hey, man, I'm 50 years old now, but, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, man, it changed my life. Okay, that happened for you. But now when we talk about those 50-year-old children, how come you think, Brother Mayor, that shit didn't translate to them kids today being out of control, walking around with names like, Farrakhan Muhammad, right? Killing our people. How come that didn't transfer?
Because, I mean, you still need, the system is not changed because you read a book, right? So you still have to put the work in and change the system and change people's ideas and culture and pass it down generationally. You know, the institutions that we build, we watch them destroyed. And most of the institutions we built were gone, have been destroyed. Some of us walked away from them. Others of it have been destroyed by COINTELPRO and other things. Whether you're talking about our independent schools, before there was a charter school, there was Watoto Shule and Ujima Shule. They weren't getting no state dollars to teach people the stuff they was teaching them in Ujima Shule. Now they want to give you dollars to have your own school. No, it's not the same thing. So all our institutions have been upended. They've been upended. All of the cultural organizations and all of the other things like that are very, very important, right? And I still contend that a lot of those cultural organizations that people like ideologically moved away from, those cultural organizations still needed to exist. We need those. We need those organizations, fundamental organizations, to teach kids who they are, that they love themselves and love their community, and what their condition is and why they got this way. And you know, their family wasn't born on Avon Avenue, and like why to expand their imagination. And the first thing oppression takes from you is your imagination, your ability to think beyond your present circumstance. Even Harriet Tubman said she could have freed more slaves if they knew they were slaves, because it took away their imagination. They couldn't imagine any place but the plantation. And it took the first, I think, the revolution they have to do, I guess, is to have that kind of revolutionary imagination, that vision, that look, anywhere is better than here, right? And that by itself takes courage to say that, right? Because you're leaving a lot of stuff behind when you say anywhere is better than here, you know? You know, it destroys our imagination. And I think those cultural organizations are incredibly important. Those institutions are that went away. We needed those. We needed those.
What are some of those organizations? What are the names of those organizations that you're talking about that disappeared?
Whether it's Committee for Unified Newark, United Brothers, all the organizations that existed, Congress of African People, all these organizations that existed around here, right? That exist, that did social and cultural works. Quest organization that used to be over there on Custer, right? All these organizations that grabbed young people, that taught young people, that made them love themselves and give them information and books to read outside of school. Organizations that you know, that fought for housing, organizations that fought for education. But at the basis of those organizations was our community. Right, our community. We making alliances, and so our community, we have to make alliances with people, but it's not really a true alliance because our community is not together.
Mayor Baraka, before we change the subject from Malcolm, when you read our autobiography, how did that book impact your life? We've been speaking about that all week in different forums, and people have answered that. You know, how that impacted your life?
Well, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. You know, when I read it, you know, it impacted me in a way because I was able to see the development of his life. Right. The first book I ever read from cover to cover was H. Rap Brown, Da Nigga Da. Right. I read it because the title said that. You know what I mean? I wanted to know what that was.
All right, so, hey, man. Hold on a second. You get ready to sell some more books.
That was the first book I read. You know what I mean? From cover to cover, and it just like put me on fire. Like, what the heck is going on around here? And you know, autobiography from Malcolm X was soon thereafter, and it kind of gave me a perspective of, you know, just the historiography of how they've oppressed us, his family, the Garvey family, him being his father and him being involved in the Garvey movement, all the way up to the present day. It just gave you a clear vision of just how we got the way we are, like, you know, in these neighborhoods, in this situation. And I think what it also did was give people courage. And it gave me some courage to give people courage, like to say and do the things that you think you need to say and do, right? I was in a book club study group with some of my friends just recently to read autobiography of Malcolm X. We was discussing it, and they was talking about why Elijah Muhammad had so much impact on Malcolm, and why it changed his life. And they was trying to say that prison may have something to do with it. And I say, well, it really got nothing to do with prison, right? The problem was Malcolm was in the dark, And what Elijah Muhammad said was unimaginable to him at that time. And that goes with that imagination. To say that the black man is God at a time when you're conking your hair. You understand what I'm saying? And you're doing all this stuff is an unimaginable thought you put in somebody's head. That really triggered a light and emotion in him to do things that he normally did not do. So I think no matter where he was, him running into that information really transformed his life. And that's why I believe in culture and education and study and all of that, because I think it'll turn you right upside right, right? Instead of upside down, you turn upside right, and you'll be able to do the things you need to do.
But why? But why don't we have, you know, those kind of groups and meetings anymore, man? I mean, we don't, you know. I mean, you know, you remember on a Friday night, man. You know, y'all would be speaking somewhere, and we'd be in Brooklyn, we'd be all over.
And it just sound a little bit because
that stuff is purposeful, brother. That stuff got destroyed deliberately and purposeful, you know. And then we didn't have this, and on our side, just self criticism. We just didn't have the staying power, the organizing ability to keep it going when you start taking care of your families, because we didn't incorporate all that. Back then, you know, folks made places for families, made places for children, gave work responsibilities for everybody, you know. And we built an organization for college kids and not for families. And that's the problem. And so when families started, we couldn't sustain it with all of the pressure and things that were coming from the outside. And a lot of those organizations were generational, right? They had people in them, you know, fathers and sons, you know, daughters and mothers downward. And and I think the system made it difficult for any of that stuff to sustain itself, man. They went at them organizations, man. Those organizations, look how fast they dismantled the original Black Panther Party, right? And they were under full-blown attack. Full-blown. They didn't blow up no buildings. They didn't run in the Capitol building. Like, well, they went to the Capitol building, but they didn't run into it like them people did. I'm talking about the U.S. Capitol building. They didn't do all that stuff, right? So, you know, they ain't ran into no mass jiz and shot nobody and ran into the churches and killed people doing Bible study. None of that stuff. But they, you know, they hit them hard, and not just them. Many of these organizations like that got hit hard. Yeah, that's why a lot of the youth that came up in that time period, some of them have a different viewpoint of the struggle than everybody else. Like they feel a certain kind of way about it because, you know, it affected their life. And, you know, I start talking about that, I start getting emotional, but that's just real, man. You know.
And Mayor Baraka, shout out to my cousin Clifton, who was a part of your as well. And I think about, you know, the stories I learned about him when I got older, not when I was younger. But I know we're transitioning. Article just came out with
Donna, your sound. I can't understand what you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
We're getting a lot of feedback as well.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Governor Murphy just said on Memorial Day that the mask mandate is going to be lifted. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are going down, and you know they're saying like what it is. The only problem is you don't know who's like vaccinated, who's not, who's free from it, who's not, and so it is hit and miss, right? In my mind, is hit and miss. Look, the city of Newark. Right now, we are like about 48% of the people in the city have been vaccinated, right? And the East Ward is leading the way of that. Downtown, East Ward, the North Ward to follow. Our communities, we're still at the back. So that's where we are, right? And we have to be mindful of that. That when they say, even if they say 70% of the state has immunity or whatever it is, Newark is only about 3% of the population of the state. So we can be 100% of the 30%, and they can still go about business as usual. And so we always have to be mindful of that and what we do when we organize and strategize and figure out what's good for our community, because we'll be 100% of the people who have nothing, and usually that is the case. So
I will say, when I went to finally get vaccinated, I went through Newark, and I got vaccinated in less than half an hour. From beginning to end, I went up to the health department, and it worked smooth. It worked well.
yeah, thank you. I thought they do a good job over there as well. I got to get out of here to this meeting, but I want to say a little bit about, I was on a call with the White House, and they had LA, Chicago, all of the places where it's going down, right? And we were up there, and they called us up there too in Newark, our struggles here, and youth violence. I said some data needs to come out, right? Because it is not coincidental that youth violence is increasing all over the country in all of these places where we are. Some data needs to come out about why this is happening, right? Why this is going on and what needs to happen. They want to have a congressional hearing on how COVID and the era of George Floyd affected the Black and brown community. Youth violence is going up all over the country, and we missed it in 2020. Like it didn't happen to us in 2020. It happened to everybody else in 2020. We starting to feel it right now in the last couple of weeks, months. We starting to feel what everybody else has felt. And so it skipped us for a year, and we have to do some things here to deal with it and tackle it. But there has to be a reason, and everybody is saying that more guns are available in our community now than have ever been.
Wow.
And
So all of these police forces are taking more guns off of the street this year than they ever have. Right? And so there has to be something to that.
So in terms of what the police are looking at and what the police recognize right now is that there's just a lot more guns on the street that they're noticing, and it is noticeably different to the people who are doing it.
Yes, it's noticeable that, look, this time last year or the year before, people are getting 40% more guns, 30% more guns, 50% more guns, and not doing anything different than they were doing 2 years ago. It's more guns in our community. How? Why?
Yeah.
Then they have these ghost guns, right? Guns that you put together, you buy in a box, it's separate, and you put it together, right? They don't have the same restrictions, and you don't have to go through the same restrictions to get a regular gun. You use a ghost gun. So those are popping up too. But they're in our community. Yeah, they're in Newark too. Absolutely. Absolutely. And these guns are more available in our communities. They're there. We have more guns. Look, in a week, I think last week we got 15 guns off of the street in 1 week. So these guys are getting more and more sophisticated weapons. That should be looked into, because I would like to know where that's coming from and what's the source of that, right? I told y'all I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I believe in conspiracy.
Well, when you were a city council person, you commissioned didn't you push a study that was done, and you found out that most of the guns that were coming in were coming from a particular place?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. We found out that the guns were coming from first, like out of state. I don't have the thing in front of me, so I can't quote it directly. But we knew it wasn't coming from here. Let me just say that it was coming from out of state. Most of the guns were coming in here, and it's Pennsylvania, for the most part, Virginia. A lot of those guns come from there. People come to our community and bring those here. So we really have to figure out what's going on. and that's for sure. And why it's getting in the hands of these kids who are unfortunately uneducated, like they should be, and are out here with weapons, turning them on each other and themselves. And we have to get them out of their hands, but we also have to create more opportunity and programming here to pull people away from that. We're going to expand with some of this money we're getting, our summer youth employment, and then we're going to put at least 100 and 150 jobs to the side for those most difficult youth, the kids that are the more likely to be incarcerated, that have other issues, so forth and so on, to pull them in and put them in a program, not a regular like McDonald's job or a job at City Hall. We want them to go through workshops at Refal, or workshops at you know what I mean, at Newark Community Street Team, or over at the Hub. We want them to be in those settings where they're not just getting a job, but they're getting nurturing and the kind of information and education that they need, that I was getting in African free school. That's what they need. They need that. Like, and we need to pay them to go and do that with this little bit of money that we get. And we need to go ahead and do that. It's important. And guess what? It was co-signed all over the country. People were saying, that's right. We need to get that done. We need to do this. We need to do that. Because really, people don't have a clue why these things are happening this way. Some people are saying because the police are laying down. That's not true. And that's, don't fall into that. That's the conservative talk that make you think, oh, the police not doing their job because there's so much pressure on them, because we want them to be stop violating people's rights, stop murdering people for fake $20 bills and Lucy's and $300 warrants and traffic stops. That's not true, because if the police are getting more guns, that means they're more productive, right? They're out here doing their job still, but at the end of the day, us calling for justice is not a contradiction for safety in our community. Yeah, and so we can't fall into that argument. The reality is something else is going on. Our young people are feeling some kind of way. They're disaffected. We have not done what we need to do, and somebody is putting guns in their hands at a time that's most volatile.
And we got to stop it. And man, thank you. We know you got to go. And so, brother, we appreciate you dropping all that science with us today, man.
You got it, brother. Take care.
All right, brother. There it is, y'all. Y'all just heard from, our beloved mayor dropping science. I would simply say, man, I can't speak for everybody, but I would tell you to go back and look at this. If you want to know something about electoral politics, period, and you want to know something about culture, I would go back and I would re-listen to this Facebook Live, and I would take notes. The mayor was teaching tonight.
Yeah, and as he does, as I said before, in the first parts when he was talking about the elections, after every election, there's always a postmortem, and some people do self-reflection, some people do not, but he always does this great self-reflection. So glad to have that. And even in the last part, when he's talking about when he was talking about the number of guns and the levels of disaffection that seem to be higher, as a teacher, I know that I am having a lot more students who are having mental health crises now than I did last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And we've had them, right? And it's been growing, but it's not like I've seen this year. I think that going on.
And the thing is, John, he said that is directly related to the George Floyd murder. I thought that was interesting.
Well, I mean, in terms of the study, he said about studying it, right? Like to think, is that the case? Is this what is going on? So I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of just looking at some of those things that are affecting our community. We really have to study it, right? We really have to see what is going on in with that regard. I absolutely agree.
And so if there's more guns in our community than at any other time, listen, John, I don't know about you, man. I don't know where to go to buy a gun, but that's frightening when you think that they are that readily available to put in the hands of kids who are having social and emotional and mental problems. I mean, that's incredible, because I saw something on the news recently where two guys were having an argument because they were in line for a bath to get to the bathroom, and one guy, who was in front said, "No, I was there." One guy on the side of him said, "No, I was there," and the other guy just pulled out a gun and shot him in the head, just over who was in the front of the line.
Wow.
I mean, shot him twice in the head in front of everybody. I mean, and I'm saying, when you think about, that level of access to weapons, what it says is that you don't have. I mean, if it push came to shove, and you had to talk your way out of a situation, instead of doing that, you're gonna pull out your gun, with your, because of your current mental condition, and kill another person. I mean, just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think that there has to be, in a way, some calculation for what the edge is going on right now. And I think that one of the things, and hopefully we're going to have some conversation on this in the weeks to come. The Newark is actually in a position where we have an office of anti-violence prevention that is, can imagine, is working overtime with trying to figure out what's going on. Because, the first thing he said was not, we need more police, let's get more police. No, the police are doing their jobs. There's something going on that we need to address. It may be in terms of opportunity. It may be in terms of like depression. It could be like, because we know that COVID's going to have an effect. People have been locked in for a year. And we have to figure out what it is and what we can actually do that would be effective, and not jump in and have policies that that could possibly be counterproductive in the long run, right? As in, it could possibly be like, people are like, oh, we just need more police. We need higher sentences. We need to do all the wrong things that we did in 1994. There has to be a smarter way to deal with rising crime than what we hear on conservative media and the more popular things that are said.
So the question I got, though, John, I would say, one is, if Keisha was here, I would ask the question. So are all of us somewhat mentally affected by what happened over the last year with COVID? And I don't know readily if I feel anything. I don't know, but I could well imagine, for those people who perhaps were cramped in situations where they couldn't go outside, and things were happening inside their house. But I guess I would ask the question, am I somewhat affected by that? I don't feel anything, but I don't know. I mean, because who is going to really know the total human cost of what, we know on one level what this has cost monetarily to this country. On the other level, do we really know what the cost has been mentally on everyone, but particularly to the Black community? Because if you hear what Mayor Baraka just said, and you stop to think about all of these folks now, all the young people who are troubled and violence going up in our community, and they having access to guns now more so than ever before. I mean, and he's right. I think we've got to try some other things, right? We've got to try to use some of that CARES money to go after those kids. Like he said, he was setting aside 150 jobs for those kids who are most difficult to get to. I agree. I mean, because for some of them, if you can give them not just a regular job, but give them opportunities to be paid, to get in programs that are going to help them cope with life's ups and downs and life's challenges. Because, most of them kids ain't going to end up at Science High School, John.
You know what, Ed? It's funny. Well, I wanted to say something, but my phone went out. I'm a fan of Chicago PD, and it's interesting what Mayor Baraka said, because there was a line Wednesday on Chicago PD. Now, I know really builds his scripts from the lines, from the news articles. But one of the lines that was said in Chicago PD that crime had went down in Chicago And then there was a conversation, and they said also Newark, New York. And so they used the word Newark. So I have wanted to say that to Mayor Baraka, that they specifically use our city. In terms of the mental, I think the mental wellness is something that's going to be measured for a while after we come out of COVID, because we're still getting through COVID. So I think the first thing was to deal with the immediate. But I think by all means, and I just said this in another conversation, we're all have been affected indirectly or directly, because let's say we all still have our job, but we were still now we're working from home. We didn't sign up for that. We just had to adjust to that. So
Right.
that adjustment was a challenge, for
Right.
some, and come to find out, maybe, we always had the opportunity to work from home if we were sick. I'm sure a lot of people are going to revisit that now,
Right.
having your kids at home, there was a lot that things that we're going to have to measure. I think teachers are going to be appreciated at a different level now, because now the parent also became the teacher. And a lot of parents couldn't wait to get their children back in school, because they were used to that 8 hours or how many hours of them being at work and the child being at school. But having to do work and school was a tremendous challenge on a lot of households. So it's going to be interesting, but the mental wellness, I think, is going to be measured. And we should have Keisha on to see how, this is her work. This is the type of work that she does. How are they measuring it? How will they measure it for the long haul? And what are some of the things that she's seeing? If you can remember, at the height of COVID, doctors were committing suicide. So
Right.
it's that's a very interesting question that you put forth. And we should have Keisha on to talk about it in depth. And
Yeah.
and I said
Yeah.
as soon as I seen did you see who just joined us? I was like, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ed. Missed you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
And, and when you think about it, Donna, I think that that's some of the real hesitation that folks are having going back to work. Like a lot of folks, don't really want to go back because they've sort of been locked in for a year, and there used to be this saying when people talked about having cabin fever, you know, but folks are having real hesitation. I don't know if it's going amongst people again, or if it's just really a health issue, or it's the fact that they may not be vaccinated. I don't really know what it is. It could be a combination of all of that, right? And so people are having hesitations about going back out because of their level of distrust for what's out there. That's on one level, and then two, you might not feel comfortable being in that work environment or being around people anymore, right? And especially if you realize that you can do your job at home, some people might not feel comfortable doing that.
And to that point, and the dynamics, my niece is a lawyer, and her job told her that she can work permanently from home, and they're going to reevaluate, their real estate costs. So
Wow.
the dynamics of it has really changed the game.
Yeah.
A lot of companies have permanent packages where people can work from home now, and we should keep our eye on that. We should keep having conversations as it begins to evolve. And even I know I asked that 6:51 p.m. question to Mayor Baraka about the mask, and the reason I asked, because as you know, I've been working on one of the vaccine projects, and our community has not reached the numbers that other community in terms of persons getting vaccinated for good reason. Our people in our community have tremendous questions and trust concerns, and they're just not comfortable, which is fine. But if our numbers are not there, you could be in the room with 4 people, and maybe 3 of those 4 people did not receive the vaccine, and so which means we may be more of a danger. They may be in more danger if I received it and they didn't, and if they get COVID or something. But I don't know. It's just a lot. Things are very different. Everything is not for everybody, and our community can't look at things the way that every other community is looking at it.
Well, that's right. That's absolutely right. And I think that that's something that we're going to have to revisit. That's some things that we're going to have to think about. I just think that what the mayor brought to the table tonight, just in terms of the violence among young people, is on the rise, and particularly in our community. I mean, that's and it's directly related to COVID. And so based on that, Donna, it would seem to me that, of course, the mayor says he's going to use some of that $88 million from the CARES package that the city received, but they're going to need a lot more money, if you're talking about trying to repair people who have already been broken, and now you can directly relate it to, a murder incident of George Floyd, and you can relate it to COVID. I mean, it's and for Black folks, I mean, you remember that old saying I used to say, when white folks catch a cold, what is it? Black folks have the flu or something.
Have the flu. That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
So
and
we were already having things bad.
And I'll say to you, I'm sitting on here with a stage with men right now, and I know for me, and we talked about it several weeks ago when we were looking at the George Floyd trial is going on, and then under the subheadings, under the bottom, you see come up that another police shooting within the same area as George Floyd happens. What does that do to your mental health? As a Black woman, I was so frustrated and angry when I seen that headline. But but you also deal with fear from my brother, husband, sister. I mean, my brother, my husband, my uncles, and all of that. But how do you feel about it when you see something like that? We're coming into summer. You're driving around. Are you less apt to get in your car and take a ride because you don't want to be pulled over by a police? What are some of the things that, as Black men, you guys are feeling, in light of the couple years and the number of police shootings, COVID, all of these compounded issues?
Yeah, I'll let Chris Randall, since he just joined the conversation, I'll let him respond to that, particularly as a young man. And and get his vibe on it. Peace, Chris. Good to see you, my brother.
Good to see y'all.
And Chris, before you start,
Chris, good to see you, man.
How are you? I was just gonna say, Jonathan, you gave a whole speech and you was on mute. That's all I was gonna say. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Hey, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I heard. I saw. You moving my mouth, nothing coming out. But Chris, what do you think about this?
So it's a strange. So I was just out yesterday at a rally in Newark with Bashir, and talking about a lot of these issues. The reality of it is I'm sadly numb and indifferent to, like, it wouldn't affect my wanting to do certain things because I don't think there's anything I can do to be safe.
What does that mean? What does that mean? There's nothing you can do to be safe. What is that?
For example, if I take ice cream out of this refrigerator right now and start eating it, somebody can walk in and say, "This is my apartment," and kill me. I saw that.
And that's a real case because it happened in Texas, right? Go ahead. That's not.
I saw that happen. If you're like, oh man, what can I do that's safe and socially distant? I know what I do. I just go out and take a jog. Well, somebody might decide that they want to ride beside me and kill me. Saw that happen. Right? Botham John is the one that got killed eating ice cream in his own house. And Ahmaud Arbery got killed taking a jog. Or maybe if it's raining, I might want to put a hoodie on because I don't want to get wet. And I want to get something from the store. Well, that's Trayvon. So at a certain point, the question is, I don't think that there's anything I can do to be safe. So I think I just want to enjoy life the best that I can, understanding that there's no guarantee of my safety at all. Me saying, me talking about safety is an oxymoron at this point.
So So if you feel that way, Chris, and you an educated young brother,
Yeah.
and so other young brothers, because what the mayor said before you came on, I don't know if you heard him.
Yeah,
He
I listened
said
to the whole
that.
video. He was amazing, as
So
usual.
when he said that there are more guns now in the city of Newark than ever before. So is that because none of them young brothers are really feeling safe unless they got their peace with them?
I give you an example.
And do the guns make them feel safe?
And Ed, I'll give you an example. One of the stories you told me when I first met you, that I have told Mr. Alston, John can tell you, I've told this story in front of audiences that are all white at communication institutes. You talked about seeing the young brother in court, and he get caught in murder.
Yeah.
And the judge give him life, and he said, does he have anything to say? He's like, yeah, you've given me life, but I only killed him, and he used the N-word, right? Yeah. The reality is how many times can I tell you the same thing without you internalizing it? Right. So if you mean to tell me that you're not going to show me the videotape from Andrew Brown, you're going to say that it was, and he getting shot in the back of the head. You're telling me that you want to bring in Ahmaud Arbery's criminal past as if that had anything to do with the incident of him being shot on the side of the road. If you're telling me we still finding nuisance places, what's your friend's name with the pearls and the chucks that don't even know whether or not it's racist or not in America?
You mean Madam Vice President? Madam Vice President?
It's Madam Vice President that doesn't know if America is racist or not. That one, yeah. When those things are all happening in conjunction with each other, it takes away particularly if you're not empowered with a certain notion of culture, it takes away your value to life generally. Particularly if that's what the message being sent to your own. Like if that's what you see every day, perpetuated all over on every airstream, it is what it is. The Vice President of the United States does not know, even with all things I just said, whether or not America is racist.
Well, can I get a 30-second to 1 minute answer by each of you? What do you think she meant? Do you think because it was said, she said it, and who else said it in the same week? Two people said it.
Tim Scott.
All right, so you had the Republican. And did Biden also say it the same week?
He did.
You did.
Yeah.
So are we trying to make people feel comfortable? Each of them had a different reason.
I told all of y'all they was the same person. Y'all yelled at me.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Chris. What happened?
I said that they were the same person, and all of y'all yelled at me. I just wanted it for the record. But yet, here they are saying the same thing. Oh, and didn't we just get a Stop Asian Hate bill signed by Biden with Kamala Harris standing behind him with a big smile on her face? That happened, right?
So there's the oxymoron. Why do we have to sign that bill if we're not in a? Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying that. If you got your pearls on, you got your pearls on. I'm just saying.
Right. That is a contradiction. And so I think for black folk, I think if white folk had to live black, and of course we can't really speak for Tim Scott, but if white folks had to live black, I think that they would know unequivocally that America was a racist country. And I think Biden, I think he might be speaking his real truth, right? I think maybe he really does believe that America is not a racist country. I don't know if that was a political statement, because when he's running for elections and he's amongst black people, he would definitely say that America is a racist country.
He's a segregationist.
But now that he has the platform and the bully pulpit of the highest order. He said that America is not a racist country right now. So, again, folks are playing politics, man. But for black folks, what's going on in the black community is real life. I mean, you heard the mayor said he's on his way to a rally now in regards to young men being killed in the city of Newark.
Yeah, but it's a trickle down. If the vice president of the United States does not know whether or not it's racist, whether or not America is racist, and they attended a historically black college or university, okay,
Yeah.
and if they don't know, they have no idea whether or not America is not. And then if you just so happen to turn on your friend Jim Clyburn, we don't need any qualified immunity just because we don't want to get rid of that.
Right.
If you're not going to fight for the most stringent policy at this point, with black male bodies dropping every day and repeated on your time, black men getting killed by police is so normal on your timeline that you can see it and stroll through it.
And before, with the previous question about racism, and I wanted to stay there, and this is a very sensitive subject, and I know Will and Jada did it on their Red Table, I don't name it, their Red Table Roundtable, about the bill that Biden just signed, hate against Asians, and the conversation they had was African Americans and their frustration. And so I don't know how to say. So, well, the conversation that Will and Jada had was, Chris, you still there? Oh, here you go, Chris. Okay. With how African American, so Asians don't necessarily support our things that we're going through. Should we support,
that's why they
the
get what
issues
they
they're
get.
having right now? And
The problem
so that
is
was
that's
the
why they
question
get what they
had.
get.
Wait a minute. Let me finish my question. So, so should we get out there, march, feel, and have compassion and all of that, when the same extended to us? And if we don't do it, are we kind of being hypocritical? I don't know. Go ahead.
There was an article written in the 90s by a professor at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His name is Gregory J. You can go read the article free online. It's called "Who Invented White People?" And in this whole article, he posits that if you look at all these different groups, the Irish, people from Poland, Catholics, etc., that the way that they pass the white test is whether or not they can be anti-black. And I think that if you look at every modern ethnic group that has come to the United States in a post-slavery context, their political uplift has been, can they prove that they are anti-black? Right? So for me, this term ally has gotten harder and harder for me to swallow. I don't quite know if that's a thing. And to be honest with you, it's kind of like, Donna, Baba Zayid almost got me killed one time. He was leading the protest. Didn't tell nobody, just leading the protest, walking down the street. And an officer is walking behind Baba Zayid with his hand on his pistol, walking behind Baba Zayid. He don't tell nobody that what the police is doing there. He walking behind him with a hand on his pistol, and he's coming, and Baba Zayid is talking to the crowd and doesn't see this officer. True story. I run clean across the street. I wasn't at the rally, wasn't told about it. I run clean across the street with ignorant intentions. By the time I get across the street, Baba Zayid go, "Whoa, because he must have saw my eye. Whoa, what you doing?" I said, "You see the officer behind you with the gun?" He's like, "Yeah, he working for us today."
And this was in Newark?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Ain't nothing gonna happen to Zayid in Newark, not with no cops.
Well, yeah,
you can believe that. Listen,
look.
Let's be clear about something, Chris. Zayid,
he was looking out for his comrade.
No, that's cool. But let's be clear.
But he didn't know.
Ain't nobody gonna get in Zayid ass like that. Let me just be clear about that.
That's fine. But what I can't have on the record is that I didn't run across the street.
Well, we appreciate that.
That's gonna be what the story gonna be.
We appreciate that. But trust and believe, Zayid got people in all the right places.
Well, that's true.
Any of those people make a move on Zayid, trust me.
But
We'll be on it.
the point I was making is, if you see somebody harmed and you have nothing to say,
Right.
can you expect their support? Okay.
No, hey, listen, I guess, so you disagree with what the man was saying when he was talking about allies, because you just said you have a problem with that.
I said that term is hard for me, given the reality of my life. Like for me, knowing what Jim Clyburn did in the election, knowing what the black vote did for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, knowing that it is black women, particularly, whose vote pushed them over the top, got them elected, and in our face, with Ma'Khia Bryant, with Breonna Taylor, with all of these things happening, and it's an Asian hate bill that get passed.
Well,
And
I think
and none of our elected officials said anything about it. But
in
again,
a
that's
sense,
politics.
anything about said anything in what aspect?
I think the comparison is there was an anti-lynching bill that was supposed to get passed, that people thought was going to get passed, that I actually thought was passed, right? And I'm looking, and it still says it's a bill. And it passed the Senate once, but for some reason didn't get passed because the House didn't vote on it. When the House voted on it, now the Senate doesn't want to vote on it. So, lynching has been going on since the 1800s, consistently in the United States. And when Cory Booker and Kamala Harris brought the anti-lynching bill up, I'm like, wow, you're about like 50 years too late, right? Like now to outlaw lynching, right? And I'm like, wow, it seems like a bill that that's effectively just a hate crimes bill. It doesn't and it still did not pass. It still can't pass. So
can't get it again. Can't get it out through the Senate. They're not bringing it to the but we understand, and we talked about this before, and Jonathan, you said the optics of it. It looks very bad, but the reason why one bill has been passed and the other has not is because the groundwork that was done by various communities, by this community versus that community, and that's it. I mean, and we have to understand how politics works and how they got that done, and what we have to do better in our community. And I think Mayor Baraka spoke about that, and Jonathan, we talked at length about it. It still looks bad. Yeah, I got.
But Don, I want to push back on that a little bit, right? Part of the reason why, a lot actually, part of the reason why it didn't get passed is because white senators are more sympathetic to one group than another, and it isn't necessarily level the public interest politics in terms of that level of support. Because we have reached out to Republicans, we reach out to Black Republicans. I think that you can't. Anti-Blackness is real.
No doubt. Yes.
Anti-lynching is supposed to be a no-brainer. Anyone can do it. Right. There is zero political cost for white senators to vote that Emmett Till shouldn't have happened. Right? It was called the Emmett Till bill. It's long time after Emmett Till. There is zero cost on a white senator for voting saying that Emmett Till should have been lynched.
See, I was with you.
I want to push back a little bit.
I was with you, John, until you said that. If you cannot, if you want to be hated in America, just act like you like black people a little bit. That's all. People understand they will lose votes if they support black people in any meaningful way. Why would I teach critical race theory if the vice president of the United States who went to an HBCU is not sure of whether or not America is racist? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You don't need to teach any classes on diversity or acceptance or sexual harassment if
1619.
If women think there's no sexual harassment in the workplace.
Right.
That's the analogy.
But no, go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, to me, that's the analogy. If if President Hayes and Asia Norton and Donald K. Williams said, I have never misogyny, that's a thing? I've never heard of it. I'm not certain that there's a thing. Patriot, there's a thing. I've never seen it. What will we do? If black people, if an Indian American like Kamala Harris, who went to HBCU, and Tim Scott and everybody else, I haven't, even Raphael Warnock kind of, who's super radical, right? Radical. If that's a thing, when you look at the way he was marketed in the campaign, that Kelly Loeffler was darkening up his pictures to make him seem like he was darker and scarier. If you can see all these things and we're not clear, then we're not clear. Then nothing should be being done.
Like you're being very clear in just saying that, like, if they can say it's not a racist country, then there is no problem to be fixed.
That's it.
There's nothing structural. It's just a few bad people. And as long as we talk to the bad people, it's like, racism's bad. And that's all we got to do.
I mean, Mr. Alston, if you hold a dinner at your house and you ask me, and I don't say that I'm hungry, why make me a plate? This seems to be real simple to me. So it's difficult. I want on record that when I said they was all the same person, everybody crucified me. That's all I wanted on record. Y'all said that when we got them pearls and them chucks in there, that she was gonna surely say something. Y'all said that.
So here's the thing. I think that it's going to be incumbent upon us, right?
Hold on a second. Who's us?
I'm talking about the black community, right? I'm talking about black people, and more importantly, conscious black people. I think it's going to be incumbent upon us to have a conversation that begins, to deal with how racist America is and where it is racist at. Right, we've got to show the evidence, right? We've got to prosecute this in such a way, right, that it is unquestionable, right? Because you're right, Chris. If you go over to Jonathan's house and he picks you a plate and you don't eat it, right, then in his mind he's going to assume, well, Chris may not be hungry. Well, that's true, right? Because Chris didn't eat his plate, but let's be clear. We live in a country where people are playing politics, and we know that it will get you no votes, right? If you say unequivocally America is a racist country, and I support black people right for an anti-lynching bill, it's not going to get you any votes. However,
all the votes that got you elected.
However, when you come and you running for election, right, you're going to say all of those things. But then once you get elected, you're not going to have any follow through. That's our history, right? That's always happened. And that's what the mayor was talking about when he talked about the ballot of the bullet, and Malcolm was talking about punishing people in our community when they were not being accountable to black folk who voted them in. And so what we've got to do, but the question is, how do we begin to make Biden and Harris accountable? Right?
All we're gonna do is tell you that he go to Republican. That's worse.
Right.
Repeat that, Chris.
All they gonna do, what's gonna happen is they're just gonna say, "Here's the Republican who's worse." So we can have the not do anything for you or to try to hurt you. Which one is it gonna be? Unfortunately, those two things are the same thing. The only election that I felt like my vote actually mattered was when I voted for Ras Baraka. Outside of that, every election I voted in, I feel like I did it because people literally died so I could. But I didn't think it was going to do anything. People, when I was yelling that Joe Biden is a segregationist, everybody said, "Oh, it's 30 years ago. Well, now you're going to hold him. Look at him."
All right, so Chris, here's where I push back on you, right? Like, I think there's a lot of different things in politics. I think that, yes. Do I disagree with him on what he said? Yes. Is it bad? Yes. Do I disagree with Kamala Harris? Yes. But do I support them on the COVID bill and what they were doing? Do I support them on the infrastructure bill and what they're doing? Newark had $88 million to be able to deal with problems in our community that wouldn't have been had under Trump. So that's why when I criticize your politics, and I'm like, what, there are some things that are very important. There's some things that are also important, and you can't ignore them, right? You can't be like $88 million to be able to do practical things to help Black people in Newark is not as important as Joe Biden, right? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Not.
There's $88 million that Newark has right now to be able to do practical things to help people within the city of Newark. That would not have happened under Trump. Would not have happened.
Sure.
Would not have happened if we had a different Senate. Would not have happened. Zero chance of that happening.
So but here's the problem. The reason that he was able to do that is because of us, but we still not getting the return.
No. I think you just ignore what I just said, right? It is not.
Vaccine. I'm happy for the vaccine, but if I get shot, it will be useless.
No.
But you happy? But at a certain point, right? We understand when we elect a president, we're not electing somebody who is like our savior. That's not going to ever happen. Right? We're not putting Malcolm X in office. We knew that.
Yes, yeah. And it's not your spouse or somebody you live in. You're looking at the values and what they're going to bring to the table, right? And we have, and that's
yes, of course,
Rhino. Yeah.
I just want to say why, but why would it have to take us to vote for a Malcolm X to get us to stop being killed? You know what I mean? Like why? Like to say it to, I mean, just to use that Malcolm X, I don't know. I guess maybe that example, it was kind of strange to me because my thing is, all right, yeah, we know that if we vote somebody in to be president or whatever, they're not going to be a Malcolm X person to look out for all Black people's interests. But to just stop killing us, though, that's a human thing. You don't have to be a Malcolm X. You don't have to be. You don't have to be a hardcore Black revolutionary to see a human situation. This is a human issue with Black people being murdered for nothing, basically. When does that stop? And my thing is, and I've said it before on the show, is that when it comes to politics, and I understand how politics works, and I've mentioned before that I believe more in local politics than the whole national thing. But when have we ever? I mean, I don't even have to ask the question because we've never gotten anything from politics when it comes down to us being murdered. Which is why I agree with some of what Chris is saying as far as the whole thing with the Asian bill being passed, and then we have a lynching bill that's been drawn up but never been passed. And I thought the same thing, John. I thought it was passed already, but it's like how is something like that not passed? When does that get touched upon in the political field? Because I feel like in the political field, it's never been touched. We're still getting murdered the way we've always been getting murdered, and it's never been touched through politics. It's never changed.
But Rhino, let's step so you just gave two bills, the Asian hate bill and the lynching bill. So both of those bills, whether the Asian hate bill went through both houses, passed, and made it to the president's desk. That happened through the political process. With the lynching bill, it's made it through one house and is sitting in another house. And therein is the problem. So it did not get to the president's desk. And that's the problem. It had, through the political process, it's the political process is not happening. And then and I would love for Ed to speak. Is Ed on in the show to speak more on this through President Obama administration? His Eric, what's Eric's last name? Eric Holder. The progress that Eric Holder was making in terms of policy was tremendous. That immediately got rolled back when the Trump administration got put in office. But so there was a lot done through that administration. But from the political process, you know, and it's, you know, and I remember there's a congressman, senator, Stoney, and I remember Joe Madison interviewing him, and he said, "Oh, I thought the lynching bill was passed, but no, we're gonna." And this is when Cory Booker and Kamala brought the bill back, but the political process did not happen in that case where it did happen in the other case, because it was an issue affecting Black people, and that's the simplicity of it, but primarily affecting Black people. But there was a lot of progress made under Holder in terms of policy. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, I just want to just to take a shift in the conversation, and because we have one of our guests on, and this is just phenomenal. We were talking about Malcolm X, and we have a legend. We have someone who was there, one of the founding members of Malcolm X's organization. And we are very honored to have journalist, activist, professor Peter Bailey here with us today. I would want if Zayid, if you want to give an introduction to him, just like a positive introduction in terms of the stuff that he's done, you could do that, because I know that you are a lover of Malcolm X as well.
Well, you actually, I think you just did Mr. Bailey well. Mr. Bailey is a proud but very, very humble servant of the people in that tradition. It was called Blacklash. It was the beginning of that journal that was being developed, and then Mr. Bailey, as a very young man, had that task, and it was an important. And just the time is coming. Just let him tell those stories, you know, because they're great stories. That was his coming of age. They have to imagine having someone like Malcolm being your teacher when you're coming of age, right? This is an incredible thing. So we're honored, sir, to have you join us tonight on All Politics are Local.
Welcome, Professor Bailey.
I celebrate every day. You know, I'm running the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee in New York City, so this is my walk for a long time. And I'm no longer a young man, since folks have made it plain in my circle now. But we're glad to have you, sir. We're glad to have you. This has been long overdue. We're glad to have you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What the first question I would ask you, and I think that it's one of the things that everyone wants to know in terms of this history. You were one of the founding members of the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Right. You met Malcolm X, as Baba Zayid said, as a young man. What was that like? What did you learn? What was that experience like?
Well, I immediately became aware that he was a teacher, because the first time I heard him speak in person, he talked about two things. He gave it like a 3-hour speech, and I just happened to walk up on it in Harlem, and he talked about one thing I remember him focusing on: white supremacy is not just something confined to the former states in the Confederacy, that is throughout the entire country with varying degrees of intensity. Now, that I had kind of heard before, so that was, the way he explained it was much better, but I was aware of it. The second thing I remember from that day hearing him speak was that something that I had never heard before in my life. He talked about this psychological warfare, the attacks on the mind. And he talked about movies and school textbooks and television programs and magazines and all those things that were a constant attack on the minds of Black people. And I had never in my life heard anyone talk about that before. He focused on that for about 45 minutes in that speech that he gave. By the time he finished, though, when I heard that he was speaking and stopped there, I was kind of vague about him. I'd heard only about Malcolm X, and everybody talked about he advocated violence and he was this and that. But after I heard that speech, I became a Malcolmite, and I have remained one to this very day. And the attacks on the mind thing has stayed with me forever, and it is just as important today as it was then. I remember I grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama, and I can remember going to that segregated movie theater every Saturday between the ages of about 6 and 13. in Tuskegee, Alabama, and they had two, instead of black people sitting in the balconies, they had two completely separate movie theaters. And you would have a theater full of black kids, and we watched Tarzan movie after Tarzan movie every Saturday from about 10 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon. And we watch all these movies, and many of them Tarzan movies. And we would sit there and be cheering for Tarzan and Cheetah against the African warriors. And when the Africans spoke with each other, of course, they used their own language. And we laughed because we thought that meant that they were ignorant. And when Brother Malcolm talked about attacks on the mind, I remembered that. Because when I grew up in Tuskegee, if you call someone black or African, you better be ready to fight. You better be ready to fight. Those were the words that you can call them. You can call them an SOB or an MF, and you might be able to just talk about it. But if you call somebody black or African, you better be ready to fight. And that was, I remember what Brother Malcolm talked about that. And I remember that this was an attack on the mind. And that attack on the mind continues right to this very day. And I remember that very clearly. And that's, to me, was when I began to see him as a master teacher.
So when you were in the organization of Afro-American Unity, it seemed like it was just an education. It was like when you got there, you were there for 2 to 3. You were there for 2 to 3 years with Malcolm X.
No. The organization we began to meet to form the organization in January of 1964. And when we were having meetings to discussing the formation, he decided the name was going to be the Organization of Afro-American Unity as connected with the Organization of African Unity, which had been formed in 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And so we call ourselves the Organization of Afro-American Unity with that name. But once that name was decided, then we sat around and discussed all the various things about this new organization, what we were going to do and that kind of thing. And when the various committees were being put together, there was a youth committee, an education committee, an economics committee, a political committee, a self-defense committee, and different committees. And no one volunteered to be head of the communications committee. So I volunteered to do that, although at that time I'd had no experience in journalism, none. But I had always done well in classes in school involving history and geography and writing and those kind of things. So I volunteered to become editor of the newsletter, and the first 3 issues we issued as the OAAU newsletter. The rest of it, we did a total of 9 issues. The other issues were called the Blacklash, and we named it that because there was talk of a white backlash, and we decided that we would call our newsletter the Blacklash. The first article I ever wrote for the newsletter was about the Harlem Uprising in 1964, when that policeman killed that young boy. And my first article was about that. And this was again when I saw Brother Malcolm as a master teacher. I wrote an article. He was in Africa at the time, although there were some people saying, the newspapers in New York, saying he was at some secret hideaway over in Queens directing the uprising. But he was in Africa and as a Pan-Africanist. And he was calling back to the office. So when it was my turn to speak with him, I read him what I had written. And I said, eyewitnesses to the murder. And he stopped me. He said, no, you can't say murder or murderer. Those are terms that can only be used if he's convicted. And we know he's going to be acquitted. And then he will be able to sue the organizations who called him a murderer. He said, call him a killing and refer to it as a killing because he's a killer and it's a killing no matter what the circumstances. So the brother who was kind of in charge of the production aspect of the newspaper, he and I went and sat down and we had already run off about 500 copies of the front page. And we sat down and kind of jotted out the word murder and wrote killing at the top. And we distributed the next day at our rally like that. But that was again, him as the master teacher who taught us to be careful about words. And so we could not be trapped by the system where they could just get us for using the wrong kind of words. And it worked because later on, the SCLC, Martin Luther King's organization, and CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, had put out flyers calling this policeman a murderer. And he sued both of them. once he was acquitted for defamation of character.
Wow. And the sad part is also that you were talking about in response to a police killing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
were the reactions then similar to the way in which we look at it now? Like, what do you see as the contrast between then and now in terms of these unjustifiable police killings that we've been talking about?
That is the exact problem that we have as a people. The reaction now is almost exactly the same as it was in 1964, and that's ridiculous. For something to be exactly the same, and to show you how Brother Malcolm, he told us to stay out of it, because he felt that sometimes the police would just deliberately do certain things so they could get groups that they were hostile towards to come out and do something where they could make these mass arrests. And though they know they had a weak case, they could keep you tied up in the courts for a year or two, And so he told us, keep our people out of the Harlem uprising, and don't get involved in that, because we don't know what's going on with that. And we did that. And but nowadays they're doing the exact same thing. They have not progressed at all in terms of responding to the police killings.
And Mr. Belly, this is Donna. Mr. Belly, this is Donna. I know Chris Randall's had some questions, but I just really briefly, when you say the response is exactly the same, can you just tell me from what aspect do you mean? Is it all the way around, or can you show me like when you say exactly the same, like in what area?
We still have no unified response. We run out in the streets and we start chanting slogans: no justice, no peace, Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff. We have no kind of serious, organized reaction to this kind of thing. Something that is really serious. We run in the streets, we shout, we talk a lot. We do a whole lot of rapping and everybody talk tough, but there is absolutely no serious programmatic way to deal with that type of thing. And it was true in that time, and it's just as true today. And what I'm saying is that we should have made some kind of advances in that. For instance, to me, if something like that happens, for instance, when they killed that boy in I think it was in Missouri, Ferguson.
Yes,
Michael Brown.
Yeah. What we should do, if we were serious as a people, we would get together, and we know that economically we provide the profit margin, or we add strongly to the profit margin of major businesses in this country. And if we were smart, what we would be doing in 2021 when something like that happens, instead of running in the streets and chanting and complaining, and then some people start throwing bricks and that become the focus rather than the serious entity. People are robbing stores, that becomes the focus rather than what is really going on. What we should do, we would really do what we should do as a people, and following what Brother Malcolm type of things he taught, we would go to maybe a couple of the big businesses and say, listen, we know we make up 35 to 40% of your profit. You do something about that police action, or we're going to not shop with you. That's how you do it.
So put your demands on the table. Okay.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
We totally ignore our most powerful weapon in this money-driven society is our collective economics. Brother Malcolm would recognize this. Our collective economics is our most powerful weapon. We never use it. We get out there, we chant, and we run through the streets, and we do this and we do that, and we talk and we run and we go to corporate and say, you do something about that killing of that young man, and or else we know we make up 40% of your profits. We're not shopping with you. I think that would be much more effective in dealing with this kind of situation than running through the streets chanting and that kind of thing.
Ooh, Chris.
Yeah, Chris Randall, do you have a question?
Yes. I noticed and Mr. Bailey, I want you to know that all of the people on the screen know how much I read. I am heartbroken that I cannot find a copy of your book, Witnessing the Master Teacher.
Well, you can order directly from me. I did it as I didn't put it in the stores, except a couple of black bookstores sold it. because I wanted to keep complete control of it. So I had it
Today is
self-published.
December
So
25th.
you have to order it directly.
Right.
You have to order it directly from me.
Today is
What's
December
the-
25th, sir. Thank you.
Chris, repeat the name
You
of
have
the
to
book
order
again
directly
and
from me.
slow.
The title of the book
Witnessing
is
Brother,
sorry. Wow,
Witnessing Brother Malcolm X, the Master Teacher. It's a memoir about that experience. It's called Witnessing Brother Malcolm X, the Master Teacher. And I will give you my email, how you can contact me to order a copy of the book.
Well, let that be the segue for what you're getting ready to work on. You got another one coming. Just tell us about that.
Well, I'm currently working on a book. Most people are very unaware of what Brother Malcolm was doing internationally. The last year of his life, he spent much of his energy developing an international agenda. His goal was to take the United States government before the UN Commission on Human Rights and accuse it of being either unwilling or unable to protect the lives and property of Black people. Now, we know all those things, horrific things that were happening between 1955 and 1965 in this country. And the only time the federal government moved on anything was when you start talking about going international, because otherwise they just kept quiet. Eisenhower moved on Little Rock when the Russians ran pictures of that on their front pages in the Russian newspapers. Kennedy moved in Birmingham when those kids were being brutalized in Birmingham, only when it began to become an international agenda. So that's Brother Malcolm understood that. So he said, what we're going to do is develop a relationship internationally, especially with Africa, and take our position before the UN Commission on Human Rights. Most people don't know that the United States government to this date has not signed the UN Declaration on Human Rights. Why? Because if they sign it, then we can go as individuals. But if they don't sign it, we have to get somebody in the UN to take our case. So Brother Malcolm spent much of the last year of his life trying to get African countries to take our case to the UN Commission on Human Rights. And Dr. Henry Clark told me after the assassination that he had gotten at least 6 countries that had agreed to do this. But I do know that when he traveled to Africa in May 1964, he had audiences, and I'm not talking about he met them at a reception, they spoke for a couple of minutes and then moved on. He had audiences ranging from 1.5 to 3 hours with Presidents Nasser of Egypt, Nzikwe of Nigeria, Nkrumah of Ghana, Kenyatta of Kenya, Toure of Guinea, Nyerere of Tanzania, and Prime Minister Obote of Uganda. And as a result of him meeting with them, then at that second convention in Cairo in 1964, they issued a resolution condemning discrimination in the United States. That was unheard of, and it had never been done before. It's never been done since. It was a direct result of what Brother Malcolm did, and I'm sure that's when the U.S. intelligence folks and the government say we got to do something about this dude.
Is he freezing? Is that oh my good?
No, he just stopped speaking.
Yes.
He just finished. He finished what he was saying. Do we have DJ Rhino? Do you have a question for him?
No, I was actually just listening to the brother. I didn't really have any questions left, man. I do want to say, peace, Brother Bailey. I remember you from back in the day watching Eyes on the Prize when they did a segment on Malcolm X, and I remember seeing you on there speaking on Malcolm, and it's just great to see you. And well, it's not in person, but great to see you live.
Thank you very much.
In a few minutes, we're going to have your friend and your colleague and comrade Herb Boyd join us, right? And I'm saying that to say one of the reasons why we greatly anticipate the emergence of your book, because there's another book that's out, but there's controversy because there's a little squabble, a legal squabble over. I'm holding in my hand the diary of Malcolm X that Herb and Ilyasa did, of Malcolm's legendary diary when he made those important trips abroad, doing that diplomacy, that Pan-African diplomacy that he was trying to gear us up for. And that book is not as available as it should be because of a legal disagreement within the family that has to be resolved. And we pray that it gets resolved because it's a hugely important book, right? But until it does, yours will fill the void of the limited availability of that. So we really do look forward to that. We should also say is that, I mean, if you can't talk about why, Malcolm was taken from us without talking about that, right? One of the things that we just had this big thing done on Netflix, Who Killed Malcolm X, and it did not come anywhere near addressing the magnitude of what he's just talking about, right?
Many of these events, the people, they ignore the international thing.
Absolutely.
This is what Brother Malcolm was all about.
Absolutely.
This is why and I must add, I read a book by Anthony Summers, a British writer, and in that book, it's about a 500-page book. There's exactly one mention of Brother Malcolm in the entire book, and it's a book about J. Edgar Hoover, and it says, "Official and Confidential: The Secret Life of J. Edgar Hoover." In the book, the one mention of Brother Malcolm, he says that Hoover had a luncheon meeting with Senator Lyndon Johnson. Now, if Johnson was then Senator Lyndon Johnson, that means that this meeting had to have happened before 1960, because Johnson became vice president in 1960.
That's right.
During that meeting, this white British writer says that Hoover said to Lyndon Johnson, quote, "We wouldn't have any problem if we could get those two guys fighting, and we could get them to kill one another off." End of quote. Those two guys were Brother Malcolm and Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them later ended up assassinated. Now I bet you that 95% of the people in this country are totally unaware of that comment that Hoover that Summers quotes Hoover is making before 1960. We tell you that he started watching both of these brothers very early in their careers.
Wow. So you're saying that the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and that international piece is the piece
I'm saying that he early regarded these two men as dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, like I said, this was had to be pre-1960, because at that time Johnson was, he says, in the book, he spoke with Senator Lyndon Johnson, which means that it had to be before 1960, because
right.
Johnson was president, became vice president in 1960. So Hoover had to have made this statement in the 1950s, probably the late 1950s. So he recognized early who were the real threat to the United States false position in itself as the leader of free people and democracy and all those things. He recognized early that these two brothers were the biggest threat to that internationally, and both of them ended up assassinated.
What was there about the international nature of what Malcolm X did or was doing that made him such an incredible threat? Like, what was there about as much as was going on domestically, why was it that going abroad was so dangerous to the United States from your perspective?
Okay, let me put it into context. That period, 1955, 1965, was basically almost the height of the so-called Cold War. The United States was involved in a major propaganda war with Russia. I always say Russia rather than the Soviet Union, because it was Russia. They were involved in a very serious propaganda war with Russia. And of course, the United States was pushing itself as the leader of the free world, democracy, blah, 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 blah. This was what they were pushing out to the world. While at the same time, incredibly horrible events were occurring in this country. In 1957, when those children were desegregating Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, Eisenhower kept saying, can't do nothing. It's a state thing. It's a state thing. Federal government can't get involved. And he kept that up until one day somebody brought him a copy of the Russian newspaper, and the whole front page showed pictures of those Little Rock kids being brutalized. The next day, he nationalized the Arkansas National Guard to protect them. something that he said he couldn't do before. In 1963, John F. Kennedy, when those young people were being brutalized in Birmingham by police dogs and fire hoses, again, it's a state thing. Federal government can't do anything until it became an international thing. Then all of a sudden, Kennedy nationalized the Alabama National Guard to protect those young people. So Brother Malcolm concluded from that the only way this country responded was if its international reputation was being affected by what was going on in the country at that time, and that's why he became a very strong Pan-Africanist, and why he developed this international agenda to take the United States government before the UN Commission on Human Rights, and especially because the United States government at that time, and I don't think so to this day, has signed that commission, because if they signed it, then we could go before the UN as individuals. But if they don't sign it, you have to get someone who's a member of the UN to take your case to the UN Commission on Human Rights. And Brother Malcolm was working very diligently to get African countries to take it before the UN Commission on Human Rights.
Let's go further than that. Let's just go further with that, because this is the conversation that you're right that very few like to talk about, right? Just as you opened talking about the psychological warfare of white supremacy on our minds domestically, right? In that war, that Cold War, right? No one had the mastery of image control more than the United States. Britain had it for a while first,
right?
With the emergence of the American communications empire, right? The United States put out this: we are the most democratic, safe, prosperous democracy in the world, and they began to use sanitized images of the American Negro. I'm going to use the language of the moment, right? As being absolutely all right with everything that was going on in this democracy, and even put up a black man. I'm having a senior moment, and I can't call his name, but he was head of the U.S. Information Agency, and he hated Malcolm because Malcolm put all of that on blast when he went abroad and said, "No, this is
Carl Rowan."
Thank you,
Carl
Rowan. That's right. Okay, and so Malcolm really unpacked the question of what he called the science of image making, right? The science of image making. So yes, I just wanted you to just continue to continue to expand on that, because we can't get away from that.
And when he in 1964, late 1964, there were 37 young people who came up from Mississippi. They were sent by SNCC up to the OAAU offices in Harlem to meet with Brother Malcolm, and he told them that. I have copies of that speech that he gave to them, and he told them, he said, "Listen, that this country only moves when something affects its international reputation to protect black people." He says, "I want you young people here in Mississippi know that you are not alone, and what we're trying to do at the OAAU is to internationalize this whole thing, so that it will be a protection for people who are brutalizing black people down in a state like Mississippi." That's what he told those 37 youngsters. That the whole idea of what he was doing, and he understood this very clearly, and the U.S. government understood what he was doing and how dangerous this was to them from a propaganda perspective internationally.
Now let me localize, Mr. Bailey. I'm going to localize this discussion for a moment, because that's the name of the show. All politics are local, right? Now we talk about Mississippi. We cannot talk about the great Fannie Lou Hamer, who loved Malcolm, right? And Malcolm brought her to Harlem also to speak to the OAAU. And then shortly, I know you were. That's why I wanted to raise it. But shortly thereafter, she goes to Africa with SNCC, right?
I will tell you, brother. I will tell you, brother. I was in the Audubon Ballroom the day she came.
I know you.
And I will tell you that the only time that I saw Brother Malcolm look like he was in total awe of somebody was when Fannie Lou Hamer came and spoke at one of our rallies. Brother Malcolm looked like he was in total awe of her, and when she spoke that day, we went crazy to hear this sister speak, man. And Brother Malcolm, I saw him. I said, man, he looked like he he treated her like she was majesty.
Yes.
He looked as though he was in total awe of her, because
Now,
if she was down there,
where am I going? Fannie Lou Hamer, of course, questions America right here in New Jersey, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, in 1964, and then goes abroad to Africa with SNCC, and witnesses SNCC have to adjust its whole relationship to the movement by virtue of the impact that Malcolm had, right? And that particularly happened.
Brother Malcolm, I think it was October 1964. Brother Malcolm met John Lewis, and I don't know who was another brother who was with him. He met them in Africa unexpectedly, and they had a chance to meet and talk for a while, and that's when he explained to them his whole international agenda. And most people don't know this. On February 21st, the day he was assassinated, Brother Malcolm told us that he was going to, those of us, there were a few of us backstage, I was one of the 5 people backstage talking to him. He said that that week he was going down to Mississippi for the first time at the invitation of SNCC as a direct result of meeting Fannie Lou Hamer and John Lewis. And he was going down to Mississippi at the invitation of SNCC to do a lecture in Jackson, Mississippi. So you know, he told us that on February, the day he was assassinated. That's what he told us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know that Professor Bailey, I definitely want to respect your time. I know that you have a limited amount of time, but I want to give Zayid a chance, because I know that he definitely wants to ask one more question. But also, Zayid, can you incorporate the question that we asked and the question that you want to ask?
I'm sure you didn't prep him for this question, did you?
No, I did not prep him for this question, not at all. But I think it would be interesting, especially given what Malcolm X said about culture and his perspective on hip hop, given that, right? So, I mean, we ask everyone, why not?
Well, first, let's just do this. We want to wind down, making sure that we're doing whatever is necessary to make sure.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, sir. Can you hear us okay? Can he? I don't know if he's hearing us.
Professor Bailey, can you hear us?
Ain't it?
Yeah, he's having trouble hearing us, right?
Professor Bailey, can you hear us? We can hear you.
Yeah, mic check.
I'm sorry. I
can hear you well.
He said,
Can you hear us now, sir? Yeah, he's having trouble hearing us. He's trying to get somebody help him with
Jonathan, did you try turning his mic off and on?
I'm doing that now.
Okay.
But continue. Let's see what we can do.
Well, everybody, so we're clear and on the same page. I'm just going to try and get him to restate how we can connect with him to get Witness and his forthcoming book, and then we'll ask him the musical question.
And what he said, Zayid, was that he was. Oh, so he's going out. So Zayid he was going to give us his email.
His email, yeah. I don't want that to get lost on this.
But I do know that that he had a strict timeline, so I don't know if he's going to come back or not, because he might have been going to do something else. So
and Mr. Boyd hasn't gotten on, has he?
No, he has not.
Okay, he might. I'll help you to forget. So they're both in their 80s now.
Right. And I know that in terms of technology.
And I'm in my 50s, and we forget in our 50s. It's not that.
Right.
I mean, we know people forget, because Zayid forgot to tell us the police working for him. So we know they forget. Also, I was, you know what's sad? I was on the way to science that day before he almost got me arrested. No reason.
Yeah, you know that if y'all
coming to science to help,
nobody will arrest Chris on my watch.
Also, when I say I ran, I've never run any place as fast as I was coming across that. I'm crossing traffic.
Them Cub instincts kicked in.
Your sister standing like 10 feet from me, 10 feet from him, and she just kind of looked like, "Oh Lord, help him, Jesus."
Yeah, but that was Mr. Yeah, I have been trying. Mr. Bailey is very selective and very guarded about who he shares these stories with and this information.
Yeah,
Jonathan.
We were very honored to have him here, right?
Yeah, I have actually been trying to do something with him for the last 15 years easy, right? And haven't been able to get him because he just didn't know how to take me. He didn't know where I fit in this landscape of holding the line for Malcolm, right? So, it was a minor coup, you know.
Well, it was great. Like, and I think,
who made the call? You, Todd.
And
you
also
know
got to give
what?
to Todd
And
Burrows, because Todd is very instrumental in a lot of the stuff, as you know, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he knows everybody. He's a journalist too. So I got to thank him as well.
Yeah.
And
So
you
it
know
was
what,
cool
Jonathan, what stood out, and Zayid, what stood out to me is that he met Malcolm, and how that stirred the course for where his career path ended up.
That was
That's
just coming of age.
fabulous. Yeah, that's fabulous.
You know, do you know what I would do to trade shoes with him?
Well, everybody has their path to walk. Yeah,
you know, I'd probably be a dead man. But
I mean, that's in terms of his college. His college was studying under Malcolm X.
That's right.
But see, what I wanted to ask him was, he also taught at Hunter College.
He was a visiting professor?
Yeah. I wanted to know, had he crossed paths with Dr. John Henrik Clarke?
Oh, if he taught at Hunter, it did.
He said that. He spoke about John Henry Clarke. He said that.
Yeah, and what I wanted to ask him was, how did that relationship between being that he was a confidant of Brother Malcolm, what can he tell us about that relationship that we don't quite know?
Well, I'll tell you,
what's it?
Here's some things to appreciate right away that I do want you to appreciate, Chris. And is this one, if you probably have it already, get Clarke's Malcolm X, the Man in His Times. That's one. Two, Clarke also was in the OAAU.
1 second. Right? I know that. What's the name of the book?
Malcolm X, the Man in His Times.
This is why I need you to answer text messages.
Yeah. Right? Clarke was also in the OAAU with them, right? Yeah. Clarke was on the education committee. Him and Herman Ferguson, right? And Herman's, we started that Malcolm X commemoration committee together, right? They were on the education committee, and as Mr. Bailey said, he was the only one that really took up the reins of addressing the question of communications. So they all knew each other, and Clarke was Dr. Clarke, Dr. Ben, and Dr. Kenneth Clarke were the private brain trust that Malcolm used when Malcolm was going to do debates. He would do his own study, do his own political landscape study, and then he would patch calls out to each of them and send his soldiers to get whatever those elders or expert elders, right, thought he should have to be a part of his ammunition, and he would take all that and whoop these so-called experts behind, right? So him and Clarke had a very serious relationship, right? And Clarke was a Garveyite, like Malcolm's parents, before he joined Malcolm, right? I wanted to share this with Bailey too, right? On the question of Garvey, he mentioned the whole question of the Organization of African Unity starting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The headquarters of the African Union is still there, right? Garvey's surviving son, Julius Garvey, Dr. Julius Garvey, he's a retired surgeon, is leading a delegation of folks from the diaspora to the African Union in August, and on the anniversary of his father's birthday, presenting a commissioned bust of his father for the headquarters of the African Union. It's a heavy thing. In fact, I'm not in the position to go, but I really wanted to put together an area delegation to really be a part of that. So the continuity of these streams of struggle is still very much with us, are still very present. There's scholarship, some good scholarship coming out on Malcolm's mother, right? Who was in the she actually was a key organizer in the Montreal chapter of the UNIA, right? And it was in Montreal where she meets Earl Little, Malcolm's father, and they marry in 1919, right? When their first incursion back into the United States is in Milwaukee, and between Montreal and Milwaukee, she is a part of an underground within the UNIA that hid Garvey out when Garvey came under fire from the States in both places. Malcolm's mother was far more loaded than the little scant references that she has been given in history to to date that really needs to be unpacked and appreciated, right? Donna, you were with us last night when we were talking about Malcolm for the People's Organization for Progress, and the question of Jan Carew. And I brought Jan to New York when he put out his book, Ghosts in Our Blood, right? And the demo laid out that Jan was actually his advisor.
Hey, Alston, that's Daryl Birch's mentor.
Yeah. I mean, so it's so these strings of continuity and struggle, are still very present and need to be, unearthed and appreciated, as we make these links and as these milestone anniversaries come up. I'm struggling with this network of scholars that are out now to figure out, this is the 6th year of the decade, the International Decade of People of African Descent, according to the United Nations, right? And we're coming up on Malcolm's centennial. This is year 96 for him, right? So I'm quietly trying to cultivate a dialogue between scholars to consider us really convening a centennial Malcolm X International Conference that was comparable to what, and we got to bring him on, Professor William Sales did, who used to run Seton Hall many years ago, right? With Bill Sales and Abdullah Kalimat did Malcolm X Speaks in the 90s, some 30 years ago. And that was a hellified series of conferences that they put together. So this and I don't want to,
Yeah, but the thing about Zayid is that all the, like, Dr. Benton and all of them and Professor Bailey and them, they're sitting in rooms and, history is being made. And I mean, they're doing the work, but now that you reflect on it, now you was like, wow, that room was that room, my goodness. The people that was in that room at these meetings are just, wow, fabulous. I mean,
they were fully loaded.
That's awesome. Yeah. Fully loaded. Yeah.
And it was underappreciated then, and it's underappreciated now. That's my point, right?
And like that
now. Now the state understood. That's why they killed Malcolm the way they did.
But like people, like Dr. Ben's papers and all of that, were his papers entrusted to anybody, like to the Schomburg or anything like that?
I know he gave his library to the nation, right?
Okay.
I don't know where his papers are. That's a question. I don't know what Clark's are. I'm concerned about, now you hear Mr. Bailey talking, I'm concerned about his stuff, right? His stuff needs to be digitized. This time last year, I did a forum that I hosted in connection with the Shabazz Center with Ilyasa, Malcolm's daughter, and one of our guests was Bashir Mchawi, my elder who's over at WBAI. Bashir Mchawi has an entity now that's trying to digitize original archival material from that period, right? And I got some noise in the background, so I'm gonna mute in a second, right? So digital archival material, so they can be preserved and be ready for the digital age that we're in, right? So that's a conversation that we need somebody to have with Mr. Bailey. Todd is probably the best one to do that because they have a thing, and I'm hoping this thing he'll be more comfortable with all of us now since that we finally had this discussion.
And Jonathan, Chris. Jonathan and Chris, that would be, and even for you, Chris Randall, because you're young now, but Jonathan, maybe that's a conversation that we could have with Todd. How do you, because to me, that's like to, you preparing your will, all that, to have that in order to say, when these series of events happen, this needs to happen, this needs to go here, and so on. It needs to be a forethought, not an afterthought.
We can digitize all that stuff. If he got
not so much, not digitize. I'm just saying to have a plan. To have a plan. That's all I'm saying. Here, so it's not an afterthought.
Right. Now, what we're going to do is we can go right into the last part of our show. It is coming on 8:30. And we know that it's DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop. I really would have loved to have gotten that question with Professor Bailey because that would have been great in order to see. Professor Small's
he probably prepared.
Great.
Yeah, Professor Bailey may have gotten us. He might, like, yo, I can't hear you. Wait, I'm having phone trouble. Like, call as soon as they say they get ready to ask the question, act like the computer going down.
No,
well, at least he wouldn't have said the hippity bippity skippity. How about that?
You can't even talk about that, Chris Randall. You can't talk about that out loud. You can't talk about that out loud. It's funny. But we're going into the state of hip hop. DJ Rhino in the state of hip hop. So DJ Rhino, how are you?
Peace. What's good?
All right, we're asking you that question, man. So how are you going, and what is the state of hip hop, my brother?
The state of hip hop, man, it is what it is. Today, I want to definitely. The state of hip hop is actually in a good place. Just yesterday, they had an event in the Bronx, 610 Exterior Street in the Bronx, New York. The Universal Hip Hop Museum has been erected, and it's close to being finished. They haven't had their grand opening yet, but it's very close to being finished. And they had an event yesterday where a lot of the hip hop elite had come out yesterday, as well as some New York politicians, the mayor, Ruben Diaz, and some other folks, were there in celebration of the Universal Hip Hop Museum in the Bronx. And there was a lot of people that came through to speak. Grandmaster Flash was there. He was very emotional. He was very touched by everything that was taking place. Nas was there. Fat Joe was there. It was good to hear Fat Joe speak because he really was very, very articulate in breaking down just his roots in the Bronx, and how hip hop, saved his life. LL Cool J showed up, and I actually got a little emotional when LL showed up, because it's like, LL is like your favorite rapper, but he's standing there in front of your favorite rappers' favorite rappers. You know what I mean? And so it was just an emotional event to see everybody there, and to even know that Mayor De Blasio was there, hanging out with everybody, and it was just it was a great event to see. And I'm waiting for the grand opening, of the building, because I'd love to go up in there. Talking about the Universal Hip Hop Museum, Grand Mixer DXT. I mean, there was so many people.
Okay.
I mean, the list was crazy. Paradise from X Clan. Say that again.
I need you to do me a favor, DJ Ronald. I need you to make me a promise on air in front of people.
What's up?
2 things. I want to be with you the day you go. The first time you ever go in there, I need to be in there with you. That's number 1. Number 2, we need to go to Atlanta to the Trap Music Museum. I know you ain't been.
Oh, yeah.
If you have been,
I haven't been there.
I need to go with you. And then, unlike Baba Zayid, we can tell people that certain people were with us and we did things, because we know that that's important to tell people. I don't want anybody to get distracted from the fact that Baba Zayid didn't tell anybody that the police worked with him. Anyway, but I do want, one of the things I talked about with John the other day is how influential you have been on my hip hop consciousness. Because the first hip hop album I ever got was Are You Still Down by Tupac. That was the first hip hop album I ever got. And my mother used to refer to him as a Feeney's little boy.
Right.
Right. That's right. His 50th. Put a pin in that. His 50th is coming up in July.
It is.
We got to get ready to figure out how we're going to unpack all of that and blow that up right here on this show.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Tupac was the first album I ever got. And it was sort of the first critical conversation I'd ever had about hip hop music too. But one of the things that you have brought to me is, having a title of the count and all that, and being able to, we've been able to educate hundreds of kids because of the T-shirts that you wear on social media. I don't know how many other people know about this, but I have all these students that are connected with me through social media, and they kept seeing DJ Ronald's T-shirts, and they're like, "Well, who is the X Clan? Who's the Wu-Tang Clan? Who are these people?" And so we've been able to educate an entire generation based on that, and that's something that I think you should just, like, in the spirit of wanting to give people their flowers while they can smell them. You should know that. That's very important.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. That's huge, man.
Rhino,
That's
are they
huge.
projecting a date to open the museum?
I haven't seen a date yet.
Okay.
But I know they said it's definitely is coming soon. I'm hoping it's sometime, during the summer, because it would be great to have something like that to go to during the summertime.
I'm not gonna let anybody distract from the fact that he did not answer my that he's supposed to make the promise to go with me the first day he go. I just want nobody to get distracted from the fact.
Yo, we can make that happen. We can definitely make that happen, bro.
So let me get this right.
You know what's crazy too? I still haven't been to the African American Museum in DC.
Listen, all right, let's get this straight from the fact. So you're saying on air that you will not go into that museum without Chris Randall. That's what you're saying.
I'll give you a call.
That's good. And I'm from Baltimore, so the DC Smithsonian is like a thing we should do.
Yeah, most definitely.
But what I would
I'm gonna give a shout out to my sister. The only time I've ever been there was when my sister Annette Alston was doing a book signing there on a book she wrote on Harriet Tubman. So they were actually selling her book.
That was a big deal.
Shop, right? They were selling her book in the gift shop before she even came down there. So she came down to the African American Museum and she was like, hey, she was about, say, hey, I wrote this book. But she turns around and that book is already there on the shelves being sold. And she's like, that's nice.
That's great.
And thank God she wrote the book. In that movie, anyway.
That's right. Because everybody, and I will say this very sincerely, everybody who saw the movie should buy the book. Because the book breaks things down and talks what's true, what's not true, all that other stuff. The book is amazing. And I'm not just saying it because my sister Annette wrote it. Annette,
if you go watch the movie, get you a bowl of cereal first. Because it's a Saturday morning special.
So what else is going on, DJ?
Okay.
Also, going on in the Bronx, June 5th on Gun Hill Park in the Bronx. June 5th is going to be claimed MC Sha-Rock Day. For anybody who doesn't know who MC Sha-Rock is, MC Sha-Rock, aka Sharon Jackson, is the first female MC in hip hop. The first noted female MC in hip hop. She was down with a group called Funky 4 Plus One More. She was the one more, but in history, if you do the research and if you let her tell the story, she was actually part of the Funky 4. And then she left the group, and then when she came back, she became one more. But she was originally part of the Funky 4. But she, even before the records, before Sylvia Robinson did Sugar Hill Records and Bobby Robinson did Enjoy Records, before there was any rap records, she was in the streets, in the park jams, rhyming. She was at the parties. She was on all of the flyers. Sha-Rock was the first female MC. This is before Roxanne Shante and everybody else. This is who they got it from. This is the original first female MC. We call her the mother. We call her the godmother. MC Sha-Rock, Sharon Jackson. So June 5th, coming up at Gun Hill Park in the Bronx, they're gonna have an event. It's gonna be hosted by Rod Digger. I know MC Light is supposed to be there. I know she's been handling a lot of the promotions for it recently. But it's gonna be a big event. I know it's really gonna be a huge thing for the females in hip hop, for the women in hip hop, and for all hip hop, you know what I'm saying? But definitely, shine a light on the sisters that really paved the way in the game. This would be a great time to, just everybody come out and come together. So again, June 5th, Sha-Rock Day, MC Sha-Rock Day at Gun Hill Park in Bronx, New York. Again, hosted by Rod Digger, our own Brick City, Newark, New Jersey's Rod Digger.
To that point,
gonna be
we
hosting.
need to make an all-out effort to figure how to get some of them on this damn show.
Yeah. Oh,
Rod,
most definitely.
or
Most
MC
definitely.
Light.
Rod Digger's been on the show before, but we need to get it back on.
Really? All right, there you go. There it is. Then we should be
Yeah.
able to do that. Yeah, that's a serious milestone. You taking everybody to school with that tonight, little brother. Yes,
Well,
sir.
DJ Ronald, did you hear the new J. Cole album?
Yes, I did.
Where you at?
I heard it one time, and it was kind of like in passing, like while I was doing stuff. It was good. I didn't hear anything that was whack on it. Me personally, I'm looking for, I'm a DJ, I'm a producer, so I got a different perspective a little bit. So, I'm kind of looking for more musically. Like it was a lot of trap beats, and I understand this is the generation with the trap beats, J. Cole. But I was just trying to hear. I wanted to hear some other things. He's got one joint on there that really stood out for me.
Pride
is the devil. Pride is the devil. Yes, sir.
Think it got a hold on me.
Yeah, man. That one stands out a lot for me. But it's a good album, man. I don't have anything bad to say about it. You know what I'm saying? I just right now in this time, especially because it's summertime, I look for a little bit more energy from the music itself. But the messages and everything he's talking about, man, like J. Cole's always been on point. And I ain't got nothing negative to say about Cole's album.
Now DJ Rhino, I'm looking at stuff. I'm looking up Shah Rock Day. This is what I'm looking at. It's saying the 6th of June.
June 6th. Okay. All right. I had 5th. Maybe you're right. Yeah, you're probably right.
All right. So yeah, I'm gonna put that.
But I know it's a Saturday, right?
Yes, Saturday, June 6th, 1 to 6 p.m.
June 6th. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you on that. Definitely.
On the J. Cole album, I was going to ask you, and I'll probably ask you about this next week. There's been this like not beef between him and No Name that's been going on for a little bit.
It's still going on though?
Well, he's got a track on it that I think is still going on. He got a track that it's.
See, that's what I'm saying. I got to hear it again. I only heard it one time. I got to hear it again.
Real subtle diss track. Real like as in. Maybe not so subtle, because one of the lines is, if you broke and clown a millionaire, the joke is on you. And yeah, there was some things on that particular track that I was.
Okay, what's the name of the
track? Do you know?
Yeah. What's the name of this? Say?
Oh, the song. Hold on. I'm keep talking. I'm gonna get the exact name on it because I don't want to give you the wrong name. But I just remember the lines from it because I've been listening to the album over and over again. So I want to make sure I get it right.
I didn't know that was going. I didn't know that was still going on. I thought they had squashed it out. But at the same time, you know how the timeline goes with things. Like he could have recorded that back when that was happening. You know what I'm saying? And then ended up putting it on the album. You know what I'm saying? Because that happens all the time. A beef could have been going on last year, and somebody recorded it. Recorded the song back when they were in the beef, and then a year or two later, an album comes out after they've been squashed it, but then the song comes, has content in it that's referencing the beef. So things like that happen.
No, it's cool because I think
it's called applying pressure. Applying pressure.
Right. And it's thorough, right? Like it's one of them thorough disses that's it's kind of like you basically it's like you broke and you clowning me, I'm rich. Money's not everything, but maybe you might have thought a little different.
If you don't like J. Cole's music and you No Name, who do you like? Deconstruction is not always constructive. And this is me saying that.
Wait, hold on, because you need to break that down and then prove why you're not a hypocrite. I'm just saying, right? You said deconstruction.
Me talking.
Right. So can you break down what you just said in terms of just, this analysis of hip hop, and what did you just say and why are you not a hypocrite? So do you have to answer both of those?
What I didn't say was that I don't know if America's racist. Okay, so I didn't say that. Okay, so that's what I didn't say. So, but what I did say is that deconstruction is not always constructive, right? So I think that there are dangerous, vile elements in what we call rap music or hip hop culture. But if you see a super positive element of the culture and you isolate that, then the question is it just provocative? Or then the question is, what do you actually like? So if someone was to say, I don't like Kamala Harris, but I also don't like Maxine Waters, and I also don't like AOC, and I also don't like insert other person, right? Then the question is, well, what kind of politics are you engaged in at all, right? So if you were to say, I don't like any of those people, and I don't rap like Ras Baraka, and I don't like, guaranteed income and all that, to me, No Name has highlighted probably one of the more conscientious people ever in hip hop culture, particularly in the last 25 or 30 years, and has essentially used her platform with particular demographics, especially Black women, to sort of hijack his platform, and I think that's problematic. I'll be the one to say that. I'll take that. You're on mute.
I know. Donna's laughing at me again. Donna's just like, "Yep, you're on mute again." Yeah, you're right. I see. But what you're saying is that if the type of criticism that, like, oh, you should be rapping about other stuff. Why was there the initial isolation to begin with, in terms of that criticism, right? Like, not that people are above criticism, but if you're saying if you don't like J. Cole, then who do you like, and why is that constructive in terms of even having that beef?
There's nobody.
Really, that's what the beef is about, right? The beef is about J. Cole's not conscious enough, right?
Right, and it's like nobody's ever highlighted the murdering of particular children, the murdering of missing girls, etc., like J. Cole. Nobody has lauded education in the way he has. Nobody has talked about the conundrum of being stopped by the police, but everybody in the car is college educated, and what does that do to the psyche of young people? He's one of the only rappers that's saying those sorts of things. So to pick him, I thought was very interesting, but I thought it was interesting because of the kinds of people who listen to J. Cole. You can't really appreciate J. Cole at this stage of the game, Jay-Z, Jay Electronica, Rhapsody, who's a friend of the show, has been on before, if you're not a certain kind of person.
Can you articulate?
But I mean, wasn't the beef between them? What was the beef? What was it that started that beef? I always thought it had something to do with something that he said in the song about females or something like that, and then she took it some kind of way, and then it sparked off from there. Wasn't it that?
Well, I mean, that seems to be a part of it, but the problem is
it was actually before that. But start, Chris. What were you saying?
No, that was certainly a part of it, but the problem is like there's this quote from the poet Terence from Antiquity where he says, "I'm a human being, so nothing is really foreign to me." As much as we would like for humanity to be clean and the manure to get wiped away from the manger and all of that, there is a part of us, our culture, our personalities that's not perfect, right? So I think that it's difficult to isolate any one statement that an individual makes and highlight it. And I think that No Name is so intelligent that it seemed like a purposeful hit, in my opinion.
No, I see what you're saying. That reminds me of I remember I used to deal with a conscious sister back in the day. We were real tight, and we were both Tribe Called Quest fans, big Tribe Called Quest fans.
Yeah.
And I remember when they put out Electric Relaxation, she was very heated off of the one line where he said, "Your fat ass thighs," and she was like totally turned off from Q-Tip at that point. Like everything just stopped. It was like no more Tribe, no more Q-Tip, and it was like that was just one line, and that was just like maybe that was just how he was feeling in that moment. You know what I'm saying? It was like, but you can't judge a whole man. Or judge a whole man's entire career and all of that from one line, just from how you perceive that one line. Because you don't even know if that could have been a subliminal line meaning something else. You know what I mean? You don't know. So it's like, it doesn't make sense to judge anybody off of something so small.
Now, if you got a whole career of being like a prosecutor and you disproportionately like lock up people in your community and do all that, and then you say racism doesn't exist, then maybe we could judge it. But if you just made that one statement, then it would probably be inappropriate. I understand what you feel. I understand, DJ Rhino. I got you.
Right.
100%.
But I think that in terms of the origin of it was she made certain comments on social media that alluded to J. Cole. They may not have been about J. Cole, but everyone thought it was about J. Cole when in terms of artists aren't doing enough. Like they're not meeting the moment, right? Like there's a Black Lives Matter, people are protesting, people are dying in the streets, and you're not rapping about anything important, right? And so he did Snow on the Bluffs, which was purportedly, right, referencing No Name. And it was like, you know, basically there's this girl, she's smarter than me, she comes from a better family, she is right, she talked about me in a way that I have to pay attention to, right? Like, I'm not above criticism, she might be right, but I really don't like the tone in which he said it, because it seemed kind of condescending, right? And she might be right, though, because at the end of the day, it seems like I'm rapping about this stuff, and I don't know if I'm ever doing enough, right? I might just be irrelevant for things on purpose, right? The controversy around that song was he got blasted for telling a Black woman to check her tone. And
yeah, I remember.
So,
because and nobody wants to talk about how much authority she had to do that, and the fact that she had that kind of play. And yes, sometimes our tone is bad, but unfortunately, Black men are never allowed to say anything in anybody, any direction, in any way, particularly defending themselves from anything. You're not allowed to do that. So what we've learned is there is an inherent vulnerability. Come on, Dr. Tommy Curry, come on. In being a Black, in Black masculinity, that checks us from ever having any real privilege. Because somebody can totally destroy me subliminally, go at me crazy on the internet, and I can't reply back, even if I found it to be inappropriate.
And so there was another song that was released, that No Name released, that more directly ripped him. 30 seconds. It was in the whole thing of dissing. It was effective, and it was but it was like a 30-second, 35-second song that was dropped, just like the response. And then everything quieted down. And then when I bought the new J. Cole album, Applying Pressure seemed like, you know, Snow on the Bluffs was all really nice, right? Like the tone was, you know, you're smarter than me, come from a great family, all the other stuff. This is just a diss track, right? Like this is like it's smart because anything J. Cole writes is smart. Like both J. Cole and No Name are poets. Like I think that they're serious poets. I think that they're both brilliant, right? Like I think there may be courses about what No Name's poetry is about and what she does.
Oh my God, John! Oh my God!
Right?
Is No Name Brandon?
You loved No Name, Chris Randall, right? Like you love much of her music and lyrical content.
I'm not a fan anymore.
Right, but I don't. I think that she's brilliant. I think J. Cole's brilliant. I think they both do a lot of really good stuff. I think, and even this diss track is multiple levels. So when you get Applying Pressure, oh my God, that's the song.
See, Austin, if DJ Ronald, you know that. Why did J. Cole feel like he needed to lead with self-deprecating language? Well, I know you're smarter than me. J. Cole is a college-educated Black man. He ain't no fool. Why he got to lead with that? Because he understands he had to deal with No Name in a particular way because he doesn't have any defense. He cannot be in any way show any form of aggression. That's the problem with the whole thing. And I feel like No Name took advantage of that, knowing that.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, Chris Randall, and you know, if you've heard Applying Pressure, that's not a thing in this particular. That's why I think that this track is also very interesting because all the stuff that he did on Snow on the Bluffs, he's not doing on Applying Pressure. Applying Pressure, he's just treating her like a rapper.
Yeah, because he realized he couldn't get nowhere being respectful. You got to be respectful sometimes. They got to get it.
But so that's why I wanted to. DJ Rhino, throwing it back to you. That's why I wanted to just, you know, in the next few weeks, I'm definitely going to talk to you about.
I'm going to listen to this album again tonight because I need to hear it again, man. You know, like I said, I heard it one time because I didn't even realize all of that. So obviously I wasn't listening to all the lyrics at the time when I was listening to it. So I'm definitely going to check back. And then, yeah, we'll discuss it again for sure. Most definitely.
So there's something else, DJ Rhino, that you were going to tell us about.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to hit on want to say happy born day to Mobb Deep's Havoc. Havoc is one half of Mobb Deep. He was Prodigy, who we lost. He was his MC partner as well as the producer for the group. Havoc had a birthday today, May 21st, as well as the brother Biggie, Chris Wallace.
Sure did.
His birthday was today, and I'm wearing this because today's his born day. He was born on this day, so on this day he was ready to live
instead of ready to die. That's right.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. So we salute Christopher Wallace, BK's own, Brooklyn's own, Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., Frank White. We want to celebrate him on this day because what's crazy is that every time March 9th comes around, you hear his music. I mean, we celebrate him so much on the day he died, you forget what day he was born. You know what I'm saying? I had to be reminded that May 21st was the day he was born. So yeah, today's a good day to blow up his music and go out there and purchase some Biggie Smalls stuff, man. Some Notorious B.I.G. Support the family.
When Jay-Z did that to me that one time, only Christopher we acknowledge is Wallace. I had to live with that for 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
I was bitter about that. That was because he did for no reason. It wasn't necessary. You were Jay-Z. You could have did what you had. You didn't need to do that. For all of us with that name.
Your name is Chris. Is that it?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also. All right, so ABC's got this new show coming on, right? And I just wanted to get your take. Maybe not this time. Maybe next time if you want to. But it's
That's
called.
Right, because we got 4 minutes, so don't start nothing new.
We got 4 minutes, and we might not be able to, do that. We might end up doing something else.
Kind of raise the time.
But it's a show called Queens, Hip Hop Queens, starring Eve, Brandy, Nadine Velasquez, and
I heard about that.
And so I'll probably ask you about your opinion on that. ABC.
I haven't seen anything from it yet. I just saw somebody post it yesterday, and I reposted it, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, it's something like apparently they're a group that used to be called Bitches with Attitude back in the day, and they Queens or something along those lines, and ABC Disney is doing it. And of course, I just always ask because I like starting trouble sometimes. So I'm just throwing that out there and have you, for next time. Is there anything you want to end off on? Because we have 3 more minutes left. So.
Yeah. Ryan, I just want to correct. I want to correct a correction. Zayid, you want to do it?
No, I mean,
Shamrock Day is that?
There's the 6th. I already said that.
It's the 5th. It's June 5th this year. Is on a Saturday. June 6th is on a Sunday.
So you said the 6th.
Yeah, and you looked at the first one, but they corrected it. So it's Saturday, and shout out to Diane from Pop, who's our faithful listener. Diane is always sending me footnotes like, do this, ask the doctor this. No, the correct day is there. So that came from Diane from Pop. But yes, this year it is Saturday.
With the correction on Sharrock?
Yes, she did. Yes, she did. She's a faithful listener. So it's Saturday, June 5th, at Gun Hill Park from 2 to 4 p.m. COVID and here's the key that you'll know: COVID compliance in effect. So yeah, it's 2 to 4, and so so 2, and we'll talk about that, and I'll coordinate that with Rhino. All Politics Local will probably coordinate 2 trips. On June 5th, we'll do a subway trip over to Gun Hill Park, and then maybe when the museum open, we'll do another trip because I want to go with him too, Chris. Thanks.
I don't know about shots. I don't know about that, but.
If DJ Ronald leave me out, Baba Zayid after Baba Zayid made me listen to these foolish things and make me almost tear up this apartment by myself. I was in here in the middle of the night jumping up. You got to hear this song by Oscar Peterson called These Foolish Things. I can't go ruin it for you.
Oh yo, Oscar Peterson is a monster. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, he was a monster. I want to shout out your sister.
We got a minute left, so what we got?
I want to shout your sister out. Go to the Frontiers International either Facebook page or YouTube page to catch your sister's lecture. Your sister did a stellar lecture on Harriet Tubman for them, using Harriet Tubman as a template for reparations. She killed it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, she killed it.
Talk to me. When was this? When was this?
Frontiers International. This is an organization in my hometown, Plainfield, New Jersey. Right. I did a talk for them on Malcolm last week. Right. She did one a couple months earlier for Harriet Tubman, and she used Harriet Tubman as a template for reparations. It was an excellent group.
Maybe Women's History Month. Maybe she did it in March. I'll pull it up and send it to you. Maybe she did it in March. Women's History Month. Yeah.
Well, the whole thing would have to be recorded because it would have been done.
Yeah, it's on their YouTube page and it should be on their Facebook page.
In closing, real quick, Jonathan, because we're at 9:00, I just want to give a rest in peace to the Honorable Judge Betty Lester, who went on to glory probably about almost a week and a half ago, if not 2 weeks. And I will bring more of her bio when we at the top of the show next week. But she's from the Essex Vicinage, and that's right in Newark Superior Court, and that's Judge Betty Lester, who was a phenomenal woman, and we must speak her name, and that's the Honorable Judge Betty Lester.
And I'm going to shout out Malik Jones. Malik Jones is was a friend of mine, graduated from high school together. He is a phenomenal basketball coach, leader, writer, who passed away in Newark, last week. His homegoing was yesterday, actually. So shout out to Malik Jones, good man, who was gone too soon. And did a lot of good work for a lot of good people, helped a lot of kids all over Newark. There are a lot of kids who grew up who love him dearly because of how he impacted and changed their lives. So shout out to Malik. Wow. All right.
Also, real quick, I just want to say also, since we're on that vibe, I want to say rest in peace to Captain Rock. We lost Captain Rock. He's one of the pioneers in hip hop. He had a hit song back in the day that we used to love called Cosmic Blast. Him and his DJ Daryl C. Daryl D rather, but yeah, we lost. His name was Ron Green. His rap name was Captain Rock, and he was definitely a pioneer in the hip hop game back in the day. He used to be on NIA Records with the Aleens. And just want to say rest in peace to Ron Green, Captain Rock.
All right, thank you. All right, so it comes to another end of another week of All Politics Are Local. Thank our guest, the Mayor Ras Baraka, for educating us for another hour on the Mayor's Forum in the 6 o'clock hour. And really special honor also to have Professor Peter Bailey on, who was part of Malcolm X's organization, educated by Malcolm X, and honored to have him on tonight, sharing what happened, sharing those stories. So thank you so much. We'll see you guys we'll see everybody again next week. All Politics Are Local, America's number one political radio talk show.